Flores with pressure in his face, escapes the pocket, tucks to run. Across the 25, has the first down, stays in bounds and takes it all the way into the end zone.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Going to the air again, that pass is high. Oh, what a one-handed grab by Pearsall, and then he took a pop at the 30-yard line.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here's Beck. He's got Bowers. Bowers. Touchdown! Brock Bowers.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Jordan Travis throwing into single coverage, and the catch made. They keep firing those jump balls, and that time Keon Coleman brought it down for the touchdown. 24 yards, and Florida State leads for the first time today.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Give it to him. Training up the middle. He's in. Touchdown, Ohio State. They walk it off at Notre Dame Stadium.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
From the 19-yard line, right hash going left to right. Man in motion on the edge. Here's a pass, and it's intercepted. That's Kareni Reed, and he takes it to the house on the first play of the game. 21 yards, a pick six for Kareni Reed in Utah.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Well, good afternoon on this Wednesday afternoon as we are rolling through the end of September. October 1st is on Sunday. Yet another full weekend of college football with a lot to get to, and also news and notes today in college football. Our guests include Brett McMurphy, Ricky Thompson, former Baylor linebacker Taylor Young, Sam Kahn from The Athletic, and, of course, Paul's Top 5 to close out the show later today, much later today. Thank you for those in the chat room. The text line is 254-339-1122. There is a piece today in theathletic.com. It's written by Max Olson. He will join us tomorrow about the behind the scenes of Brett Yormark's year-long push to get the Big 12 to 16. The part that I love about it is the insight, of course, in so many different stories. But the part that I love about it is I was reading that, and I don't know if Craig and Paul, if you had time to read it, it's very lengthy.
Oh, yeah.
But everything reported in this article, there were some new nuggets, but it was almost to a T exactly what we had been reporting for the last 16 to 18 to 24 months. Exactly the way meetings with people from the Big or Pac-12 in Chicago or elsewhere, not to validate what we did, but it makes you feel good. You know you're right. And then you see this article and you're like, man, this is like a trip down memory lane.
Well, I just liked getting the details of the stuff that we knew was going on because it's all very cloak and dagger until it actually, comes to life, right? Until everything, is passed and there's no more secrets to keep. You can say everything. And I just kept looking at this going like, if you're George Kliavkoff, there's no way you don't know that your teams have met with Brett Yormark, right? There's no way that you don't know that it could be potentially, especially given the fact that they'd exchanged messages about that, like the text, it's nothing personal, it's just business, of all that, and then you still just did not believe that it was ever going to happen.
Well, Bowlby didn't know about Oklahoma and Texas.
No, but he didn't know, but how did George Kliavkoff in this instance not know? That was the thing. It's like Bowlby didn't know, but since that moment of Oklahoma and Texas, nobody should assume that everything's okay anywhere they would go, right? So you have to always be operating of things could fall apart and things could fall apart, but the thought that they just wouldn't and not having a contingency plan was really the most startling thing to me when you really look, people are they're trying to have a backup plan, even if the backup plan was the Big 12 and not the Pac-12. You need to make sure that they just eliminate that backup plan, and that's never what the Pac-12 did.
Yeah, I haven't been able to read. It's a long article, so I haven't been able to read every part of it just yet, but I've read a good chunk of it, and I think the end result speaks for itself, the fact that there are 4 schools moving to the Big 12. But, man, there's a whole lot in this article that says that there was actually a lot going on for a lot of people that said there was absolutely nothing to anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, there's a whole lot of stuff that was going on that apparently wasn't going on, according to, 2 people out there in this world. But that's okay. Like I said, the end result spoke for itself. It's good to have the details. And, it lines up with a lot of stuff that we heard and talked about throughout the last year. That wasn't – I think we've proven, since then, we haven't tried to go to the realignment well, every day since that's happened.
Right.
We've kind of moved on from it. And, if there's something to talk about, then we'll talk about it. We've obviously spoken about Oregon State and Washington State. In their situation. We talked about the ACC situation when that was ongoing as well. But I think it's been pretty clear, and we've had people be like, hey, the first time we stumbled onto you guys because of realignment. And, maybe the smart thing to do would be to, just throw stuff out there, but that's not what we do, and that's not what we've ever done. And so that's why it's been pretty quiet on that front since everything moved on. But that's why it was so loud when all of this stuff was going on. And look at this article. Look at what was happening that entire time. So, I think it's a great piece from what I've been able to read so far. A lot of really detailed, exchanges that are documented in here, and just a much more in-depth dive into just all of what was going on. And it's been fascinating to read through it so far and just kind of get some of the little minor to the sides, whether it was Brett Yormark, and Linda Livingstone commenting on him, or is Kirby Hocutt and him talking about it, or is Colorado and Rick George and how that situation came to be, which, looking back on it, that was the one that was, Colorado said it was a legacy move, that they, it wasn't one of those where they were like, well, we're with these academic schools, we don't want to ruin that. They were like, no, going to the Big 12 is the legacy move. It's not staying in the Pac-12 and doing all that. And to see that just kind of reaffirms that, for me, I didn't give Colorado enough credit for coming back to the Big 12. I fell too much into they're in a good spot. Why would they go? And you look at it and they were the ones that were banging down the door in some way. So,
and a deadline that they were given also made a difference. What Yormark said, he did not want to beg anybody. He wanted everyone that was going to join to want to join, not as an option or alternative.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, there's a lot more I need to read through on this, but what I've read so far has been fascinating and just kind of cool to revisit it, because I feel like once football season started, we did just sort of all right, 0 to 100 or 100 to 50 and back to 100, or however you want to, define it. But, that was a wild year. There's still the tentacles of it ongoing because there's still onboarding that'll take place, over this next year. There's still, things that haven't been wrapped up just yet, like Oregon State and Washington State, what's going on there. But, it's just amazing that actually all happened, quite frankly, looking back on it.
It was kind of a trip down memory lane. Now, a couple of college football notes. One, A&M finally looks like they have a pretty good young quarterback, and they've been through a lot of issues at quarterback. And Connor Wigman, who had a nice start for them, he is apparently they thought out for a few weeks. And now the update, and I saw this from Brett Zerneman, he's out for the rest of the year. That's the update. A&M sophomore quarterback Connor Wigman, lower leg injury, more extensive than previously thought. Max Johnson will remain their starting quarterback, and again, that is a huge blow to Texas A&M. Johnson can play. He can handle it. But you have this young, talented guy that's kind of a semi-dual threat, and now he's gone.
Yeah, that's a real big bummer for A&M. Although Max Johnson came in and played well, he has a ton of starting experience. So you could be in a lot worse spots having Max Johnson in. Can Max Johnson be the guy who can keep them in this race, though, long term in the SEC West, which is as open as it's been right now, because there's not a team that is head and shoulders above everybody else right now. Everybody has shown that they have weaknesses that you can kind of exploit. So can A&M, who has Arkansas this week, and those games are always ridiculous, and then they have Alabama at home next week, can they keep it rolling with Max Johnson over these couple of weeks and build some momentum so that they can stay in the race? Or do they fall behind? Now, that gives Jimbo Fisher a little bit of an excuse, but look.
No, it doesn't.
But yeah, maybe
no,
not.
it does. It doesn't to me at all. I mean, he's supposed to be the quarterback whisperer, right? So
yeah, I mean, I think you lose your starting quarterback. There's at least a pause, and you go like, how does this affect the overall theme? But yeah, I think at this point, I don't know that A&M fans. It's kind of like with Dave Aranda. It's like if they continue to struggle, it's like, oh well, Blake Shapen got hurt. But how many times are you going to say, oh well, there was an injury, so we can't count that, right? At some point, you just got to say like it is what it is, quarterback injury or not. So I don't know where most A&M fans side on that. I can see both sides of it though, of like, hey, it's not what it was supposed to be because this guy got hurt. So we shouldn't treat it as though they played with Max Johnson the entire time. And I also see fans saying he's the quarterback whisperer. It shouldn't matter who the quarterback is. They should still be able to win games. I think it all just to come down to how many games do they win? Do they win 6 or 7? And that's clearly not good enough. Or do they win still 8 or 9 games with Max Johnson? You're like, okay, they're clearly still on the right track here. I think that's all going to depend on how they win, and how many they win.
Well, and the other thing is, look, if you're Jimbo Fisher and you've had to already bring in Bobby Petrino, which admits that you can't call the offense the way that everybody wants you to before, and then you step into the season, the SEC West, and it's actually as clear a path as you could think because Alabama's struggling, for you to win the SEC West and get in the title game, like, You've got to take advantage of this if you can.
Yeah, I mean, that window's going to close pretty quick.
Yeah.
They're not going to have quarterback issues at Alabama next year, for example.
Yeah.
Auburn's going to have more under their feet. LSU will be better, so on and so forth. So, I mean, you wish that you could strike while the iron's hot here, and they still have the opportunity to do so. But obviously losing Wigman is a blow. I mean, good young player for sure, and a guy that I know there's a lot of promise in. And so I guess what happened was they initially thought it was, or I guess Jimbo originally said it was like a week-to-week type of thing or day-to-day type of thing. And then I guess they did extra, I thought it was Billy Liucci that was explaining, they did like extra imaging, had another appointment and saw a little fracture and then looked into that and found out like, this is actually the worst case scenario. He's going to have to miss the rest of the year. So that's, that just sucks. You hate to see anybody getting season-ending injuries, and especially your starting quarterback. So in a wild year for the SEC, just when you think that you're A&M and you have maybe a leg up in some way, you get this news today. And that's just something they'll have to overcome in this wild SEC West race.
All right, there's a lot more to get to, including a couple of notes from Mike Oresco on the college football playoff after a couple of more days of meetings. Here's one. This is from Larry Williams. He covers Clemson for Tigers Illustrated. And this was a tweet from him. Subscribers to TigersIllustrated.com know that since mid-August, we have written that the attempted secession from the ACC union is likely to commence during the season. And 3 days ago, we wrote that it's likely to happen in October. Paul, you're the ACC guy. Is this now starting to percolate again?
Yeah, there seems to be some push around, especially the Clemson community, that Clemson might have been the one that's figured out the grant of rights or figured out what they're at least going to do to get out of it. But they've been very quiet about it publicly. They let Florida State go and make all the noise, but everyone knew that everybody was going to go together. When it came to that point, this was Clemson's not leaving on their own. And if Clemson figures out a way out, then there's going to be at least one school and probably another that goes with them at least. That's why the ACC has reacted the way it has, adding schools from across the country to join their league so they can keep their status the same way. I would not be surprised if you start putting clues together, like, okay, why would you come out and have all this bravado if there were still months or years of work to be done on this, unless you maybe kind of knew that you were a couple months away from figuring it out? That to me would make the most sense, because the one thing I thought about Florida State all summer long was, if you're saying this now and like trying to hit the fast forward button now, but still have 3 years of legal wrangling to do, why would you not wait until closer to the end of the legal wrangling?
Right.
Like that never made sense to me. Like, bark and make as much noise as you want, and maybe people will follow. I didn't think that was a really solid strategy, but if you knew where things were going and were confident with that, then maybe that's why you decided to like turn the volume up on your plans.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about Larry Williams to know his routine as far as throwing teasers out there, but this seems to, based on the reaction, be something that's obviously getting some play, and there's some smoke around it. There's been this situation bubbling up under the surface or above the surface now for about a year at this point, right? Florida State's barked a couple times. We certainly discussed the possibilities when the ACC was going through their Pac-12 additions. This was talked about widely as far as how the vote went and what that would mean for the future of the conference. So, things settled as you knew that they were going to when the season started, but now we're starting to reach the halfway point, and I guess people are already starting to see the offseason on the other side of that. And, I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't have any insight here other than it appears that the end game for Clemson and for Florida State and for perhaps others is to eventually leave the ACC. We know they've been rattling the cage. We know they've been, at least in Tallahassee, pouring through the grant of rights and all the various documents that they need to figure out to be able to get out potentially with as least resistance as possible or least damage as possible. Where's the invite coming from would be one thing. Who you going to? I think there's only two candidates, obviously. But yeah, I think this is something that we knew was going to circle back around at some point. I don't know if this is, hey, back in the spotlight for the next few weeks kind of a story, or if this is just one of those that pops up and then we don't hear about something else for another couple months or not. But that is a fascinating element of realignment. Just kind of funny how that all comes back today, but that is a loose end, if you will. The ACC tied up one loose end with the addition of SMU and Cal and Stanford, but that Florida State, Clemson, and whoever piece was just kind of
it's like pulling out. It's a scratch. It's like poison ivy.
Yeah, you put it back in a knot, but the knot's not going to hold forever, right? So that's how it felt at the time, and you knew that there could be more to this, or there would be more to this. So, October's just days away. We'll see what happens, I guess.
All right, Mike Oresco, after the college football playoff, and again, he's a guy fighting for the group of five, including his conference, the American Conference, had mentioned something about a desire. He had mentioned a desire for 5+7. What he meant by that, the five highest-ranked conference champions and then 7 at large for 2026, not when they expand initially. Oresco telling Ross Dellinger, among other national columnists, that he's going to fight for the 6-6 playoff expansion at least for the next couple of years, clarifying what he said yesterday. We'd like to keep 6+6 for 2 years. Why wouldn't we? We'd have 2 automatics for our group. Of course, he's talking about the possibility of the group of 5. So that's in a couple of years, 24, 25, and then 26, it might drop to 5 and 7. There's Mike Oresco on that, which is, again, and that also may depend on what happens the next couple of years.
Isn't that weird to you that Mike Oresco spent all these years trying to be included, and then when he gets the chance to be the one who's definitely included, he's like, let's not open the door for everyone. 5 and 7 sounds good to me, with him thinking that, the AAC would probably be the 5th most years right now, although that league has changed drastically enough to where, I don't know, if you have a Mountain West that has Oregon State, Washington State, Boise State in it, those are 3 teams that are pretty, committed to their football program. I wouldn't say they wouldn't be the 5th, highest ranked conference champion in certain years. So I do think it's probably going to go 5 and 7 because 5+7 because that's the other leagues, being able to get their at large. But I still think there's merit to keeping it 6 and 6 if you were going to do that anyway.
We'll see what happens with anything ACC or possibility of what both Oregon State and Washington State accomplish. Couple of notes on them, and speaking of Washington State, their offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, look at this, he's 27. The Cougars have gone from number 94 in offense to number 6, from 79 points, 79th in the country in points per game to 5. We have discussed he won the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award and other awards this week. Cam Ward, the quarterback to transfer from Incarnate Word, has been spectacular. 13 touchdown passes, no interceptions. So one of the up-and-coming hot assistant coaches and coordinators is Washington State's Ben Arbuckle. 13-0 in a ratio, touchdowns to interceptions, and completing 75% of his passes.
Oh, yeah. He's going to be a hot name, Ben Arbuckle, and I don't know if somebody will be bold enough to hire a guy at 28 to be a head coach for the first time, but maybe. Wazoo is going to have to fight people off for him. That's for sure. Whether it's as an OC or potentially as a head coach, depending on where he wants to be in his career, because what he's done with Cam Ward in just this 1 year has been really, really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, they've been on fire offensively, and Cam Ward is, as you said, a great player, Texas guy, and so definitely have eyes on him and what he's going to accomplish the rest of the way. But what he's done so far, he's right there in that mix of quarterbacks out in the Pac-12, but probably is one of the last guys named, quite frankly, behind Caleb Williams and, DJU and all these other guys, Bo Nix. That's a star-studded lineup, but he's got to be mentioned somewhere in there because he's right there with a lot of those guys. Maybe not as good of a player as Bo Nix or whatever, but he's a super talent, and that offense is scary good, especially when he's doing his thing. So, there's the people behind the scenes that deserve credit for that as well, and Ben Arbuckle seems to be a name that college football fans need to get to know, and they'll get to know him whether by prodding or not, because if Washington State keeps it up, they're going to be playing a bunch of big games the rest of the way. We're going to hear a lot more about Cam Ward and Ben Arbuckle in that offense, and it's great for Wazoo, and it's great for the Pac-12, and it's just great for college football fans that there's such an interesting league in that regard playing this year.
Born in Wichita Falls, Texas. He's very young, as we mentioned. He was hired as a quality control coach at Houston Baptist, eventually hooked up with Kitley, was at Western Kentucky when they had Bailey Zappi, who had that great run, won the Tyler Rose Award, in fact, his senior year, and now he's giving Washington State a little oomph to a quarterback that was already pretty good. Now, one other note involving the Pac-12 or whatever is left of it, but they are for right now the Pac-12. Oregon State's president put out a letter saying that they expect, this was a letter to the alums, the donors, and others from the President Murphy, that they are expecting a 44% decline in revenue, and that they, of course, are reaching out to try to find a way to get money to help pay for the athletic scholarships, not for NIL, but for just to keep the athletic scholarships going. A 44% revenue decline. And, of course, that because the fact they're going to be left alone or isolated or whatever they get joining with the Mountain West or what they do by adding to the Mountain West, but compared to what they were going to get among the Pac-12. 44%. She said something about $6 million is what they need just to offset the cost of what are the normal scholarships overall in athletics.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's to be expected. They don't have a TV deal. They don't have a conference to play in right now. I mean, they're playing in one right now, but beyond that, we don't know what that's going to look like. So, I don't know how you could put all those. I don't know what the tools are to put all those projections together when there's so much uncertainty there. But yeah, you knew that not being in a power conference is going to be a drop down for you, and that's scary financially to see, that much of a percentage drop. We knew that Washington State was already kind of in a bit of a pickle. It seemed like to begin with, that was always part of the story was, their finances in general. But yeah, that's scary. That's not fun to look at if you're a Washington State or an Oregon State fan, and you hope that changes somehow. I don't know how it does. I don't see like some life raft heading their way outside of just these merger talks and these relegation talks. And I saw another relegation article today. I got to say, I hate it. I hate the idea of it. I don't think it makes that much sense. I don't know who's signing up to volunteer for, hey, every 2 years you can get dropped down a level or raised up a level. And I don't see how that jives with the sport that we cover. But, crazier things have happened. Nobody's predicting Cal and Stanford to be in the ACC or any other number of moves that have happened. Some have made sense, Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC, but a lot of things that just sound like they'd be pure imagination have happened over the last couple of years. So, we'll see in the long run. But, yeah, that's something to monitor. I don't know how you sustain that over the long haul, and I don't know what that looks like after a couple years of everybody making so much more money than you do, not just talking SEC like we typically would or Big Ten, but like the Big 12's making that much more money than you are. The ACC's so you're dropping down way down. The difference
between the Big 12 and what they might get is going to be the difference between what the SEC and the Big Ten might get compared to the ones below.
So you're like in a third tier at that point. Yeah. That's not even counting. Where are your games? Yeah. Where are we watching your games now at this? So yeah, I mean, this is the bad part of that whole story. As fun as it was to talk about, there was always, those who get left out in the cold. And right now it appears like it's probably going to be the Cougars and the Beavers. And, we'll see what that looks like. But, not surprised that projections don't really, have a lot of sunshines and rainbows attached to them.
Hey, by the way, we'll have more from that and discuss a little bit more with that Brett McMurphy at the top of the hour. Speaking of coaching, Mel Tucker, it's official, done. At Michigan State, they have specifically and officially fired him, terminated his contract for his admitted and undisputed behaviors, which have brought public disrespect, contempt, and ridicule upon the university and constitute a material breach of his agreement and moral turpitude. This is from the same school. I wonder how many people in administration lost their jobs for all the things that went on with Nasser. But he's gone. We knew it. Now it's official. So speaking of that, what is your top 5 today?
It is. Have not done.
No. Because I'm getting ready to ruin it.
It's not. We've already done Michigan State.
Okay. Well, you've already done. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Here is the potential candidates in the hit list. And Paul, tell me how many of these you had from Brandon Marcello, who has joined us, of course, quite a bit. Mike Elko, Duke.
Yes.
Lance Leipold, Kansas.
I did not.
Jonathan Smith, Oregon State.
Yep.
Dave Clawson, Wake Forest.
No.
Jason Candle.
Yes.
I believe you brought him up. PJ Fleck, Minnesota.
No, but he was on, he would have, if I'd been this many, he would have been on it.
Pat Narduzzi, Pitt.
No. I didn't bring up Charles Huff either. But
Sean Lewis, who's the offensive coordinator with Dion at Colorado, and Matt Campbell, head coach at Iowa State.
I think he's got my top 5 in there.
Okay, there you go.
It was because it was Elko, Jonathan Smith, Sean Lewis, Jason Candle, and Matt Campbell. Yeah.
Okay, there we are. Those are at least potential candidates for Michigan State. I think all of them have good with them. Some of them are even more on fire than others. Some are just kind of solid. I would hate to see Leipold leave Kansas. I love what he's done with KU, and, of course, they have the huge game coming up at Austin on Saturday against Texas.
Man, that was an all-timer of a fall from grace for Mel Tucker. I mean, my gosh, you talk about just setting your own house on fire for no reason whatsoever. What a moronic set of decision-making by Mel Tucker. I mean, to have what he had at his disposal, the contract that he had, all of that. I know there's he said, she said, and there's more, details that'll come out, I'm sure, in the arguing over his contract and what he's still owed, or what Michigan State will say, nothing. We owe you nothing. There will be fights over that. But just what an all-time blunder of a move. I don't know, what's next for him, but yeah, Michigan State, I mean, I still wonder how much of this was them going, man, we really shouldn't have offered him that contract a couple years ago. And, is there a way we can get out of this? I still feel like there's definitely an element to that. But, that'll be a fascinating coaching search. That's a big-time school and in the Big Ten. And we know how all the forces are shaping up moving forward. So I'd imagine there's going to be a lot of interest there. Now, I'd have some questions about their administration at this point of just all that's going on these last few years. I think that'd make me just a little bit hesitant and have to learn a bit more. But I'm sure they'll attract some quality candidates. And, again, being in the Big Ten and having shown some success, that will be appetizing, I think, to somebody, but they got to clean up their house a little bit to make it as appealing as it can be. And this Mel Tucker thing's not – I feel like we're probably going to start hearing the end of him, really, but I know that fight is probably going to drag out a bit longer. I don't know how much attention it'll get.
His problem is that he admitted to it.
Yeah,
in all this, when the university started investigating, he's like, yeah. And then he said it was consensual, which at any – it could have been. The problem is that if something is 99.9999999% consensual, the minute that it becomes not, the very minute it becomes not, then it's not anymore. It doesn't matter what happened before, because once someone decides that it's not anymore, then it's not. And whether there could be things that lead you to believe that it was along the way. And there's a lot of information that's going to be missing from all this, but the thing about it is that when it comes down to it, the minute that someone feels that it's not consensual anymore, then it's not. So that's where Mel Tucker's going to hit a wall every single time when he tries to come up with that argument and admitting to it, because he said, yes, I did these things. Yes, I did it, but I thought it was consensual. Well, it could have been, if it was consensual on Monday, but then on Tuesday she decided it wasn't, then guess what? Tuesday's the thing that wins.
All right, we will break here. We don't have a guest until Brett McMurphy at 4. This is from his McMurphy's Law. It's a great piece. It's a weekly piece on college football. And part of what he has in there today is how many coaches are angry. How many coaches were for example, Oregon, Dan Lanning, all right? Or who was the coach that called Ryan Day calling out 88-year-old Lou Holtz, and then others. He brought up a Gary Patterson story from 5 or 6 years ago. And so That's one of the things we'll discuss with
Ryan Day and Lou Holtz is one of the silliest things. Like, yes, Lou Holtz is at Notre Dame. They're honoring Lou Holtz that weekend. Game day's there. Lou Holtz said what he said. Ryan Day dunking on an old man, like, to me, and like he hasn't really let it go yet.
And they were a half a yard and one other player away from not being able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he walked up to the nursing home. It's like, yeah, screw your soup, old dude.
Yeah.
Like, no, like, okay.
Knocked it out of his hand.
Yeah, I don't know. Social media wasn't really around. I feel like I was about 10 years ahead of the Lou Holtz impression game, though, because now there's a bunch of people that do it. I was doing that back in the mid-aughts, but now there's a lot of them out there. And, it was funny to see Lou Holtz's reaction and see him punch back a little bit. Good for him. The Ryan Day thing was bizarre, calling out Lou Holtz. It really was. And I'll tell you, don't pay as much daily attention to Ohio State as, obviously – hundreds of others or thousands of other people do. But, saw the rumblings over the last couple of years about Ryan Day and just some of the frustrations. And you're just like, yeah, whatever. You guys are winning like 10-plus games a year. You're spoiled a little bit, right? It's like the Oklahoma, you keep winning the Big 12 every year, but you're not winning the Natty. Like it's just one of those situations where you're just kind of spoiled with the success. But then here lately, watching play calls and watching, their offense and watching that reaction to Lou Holtz after the game, I'm like, you know what? I see it now. I totally see Ohio State fans and why they're like kind of over Ryan Day. I absolutely see it at this point. I thought that was just a bizarre little beef that cropped up on Saturday. Ohio State, that was a very fortunate win for them that I don't know really how they got it ultimately, but they did. And, Notre Dame obviously not having enough men on the field for the last couple plays helped that. But, that offense, I don't know. But I definitely see the Ryan Day detractors now more so than I have in a really long time. And it's obviously something that goes beyond just winning and losing. They see it, hear him on a daily basis, but I see it now as well. Lou Holtz didn't deserve to be attacked randomly this weekend. But hey, he's still fighting back, so good for him.
All right, we're going to come back with a stat that also Brett McMurphy has. And how many teams since 2014, don't put it up, please, Garrett. We'll do it in the next segment. I'll tease this to the audience as well. How many teams since 2014 have an above 500 record against teams they've played that were ranked in the top 25? There are 8 of them. 7 of them have something in common. One of them doesn't. And they're not off to a very good start this year, so it's probably not going to break the streak. But we'll have that, give you an idea of who they are. You might be able to pick 5 or 6 of them. But who's the one that's above 500 against the top 25 since 2014, but has not yet made the college football playoff? That and more, this is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace. They have steaks on sale, brisket on sale, pork chops on sale, and then, of course, pork, poultry, and seafood in their butcher shop. A one-stop shop for what you need when it comes to a butcher shop. You can go by and pick things out from the counter that's right in front of you. You walk in the door off to the left, there's a lobster tank. And then you have the seafood. And, man, I'm telling you, their mahi-mahi or their salmon, the Atlantic Ocean Norwegian salmon is just fantastic. The fillets, they got the perfect color. And then you go into where's the pork with sausage and more. Then there is poultry with various like whole chickens or pieces of chicken. And then off to the right, there's a larger display with what they have when it comes to beef, from hamburger to bacon to also steaks and more. And you have these tubs of these huge brisket if you want for tailgating. Baylor will be back home if you're from the Waco area. That's where Waco Custom Marketplace is against Texas Tech, a night game a week from Saturday. They have all the necessities from canned goods to chips to sauces and seasonings and more. And then cold beer, cold wine. It is Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
During Jeep Adventure Days, save big on 2023 Jeep models like the Grand Cherokee Limited with values up to $5,500. Or 10% off MSRP on new Jeep Gladiators on all trim levels. Or 10% off MSRP on a new Jeep Compass at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
So there's a story, again, Brett McMurphy at 4. One of the stories in his McMurphy's Law, the best record against AP top 25 teams since 2014 when the playoff began. At the top of the list, you have Alabama. That is not a surprise. Then you have the others you would expect: Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, LSU, TCU, and then Oklahoma State. Of all of those schools, the ones with a winning record against the top 25, there's one from the Big 12 that has been in the playoff last year, and then Oklahoma State, who has been close, knocking on the door, but have not yet made it.
Oklahoma State literally inches away
from
probably being in the college football
yes.
playoff, if not for Jaron McVay, which is a name they never thought that they would need to know and never want to hear again, basically. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma State's been remarkably consistent. That's why what's going on right now is so alarming, of just like they're nowhere close to where they've been for such a long time. And I don't know if they're going backwards, but they're at least stuck in neutral right now. And, you know, that's been just a program that year in and year out, like it's like just – will Oklahoma be the last thing standing in their way, or Texas or whatever? But like the number 3 team, like more often than not, it's them. And, you know, now it's TCU getting mentioned first, or it's even a Baylor getting mentioned first, or it's, you know, some new team getting mentioned first. And I don't know. I just feel like Oklahoma State's losing some of its mojo, guys. Yeah, when you see a stat like this and you realize just how remarkably consistent they've been for a really long time.
It is startling to me that Mike Gundy, of all the things that Mike Gundy's ever been able to do, he always has a quarterback that is at least capable, if not pretty good as a college quarterback. And to have 3 guys on the roster and have none of those guys who can go out and be capable is really, that might be the first time in his tenure that that's ever happened. And look, I know that some of the guys are not world beaters or anything like that, but he's put several guys in the NFL for long periods of their career, and it's not his job for them to be good when they get there. But he has always had somebody, like, for better or worse, that can go out and is, when you go, what's wrong with Oklahoma State, you're never really talking about the quarterback, because the quarterback's always something that they kind of always had in the works. But he is, and it's a lot to do with the transfer portal, and he's not one of these guys that's against the transfer portal. He had a great quote to Max Olson. He's like, look, you can either, say you don't like it and then get beat by all the people who are using it, or go out and get in it. I'm just surprised that he has not, especially if you're a quarterback, wanting to go play in an offense for Mike Gundy is usually a pretty good thing. How he kind of got stuck here is really surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, the whole ending of the Spencer Sanders era was just weird, and, like, what's he doing now? Like, Spencer Sanders...
He played one play last year.
Right, so, like, he couldn't be leading Oklahoma State right now?
Yeah.
Like, what? I mean, seemed like it would solve both of their issues, but obviously that marriage, dissolved there at the end for various reasons. But, yeah, I mean, I think it just goes to show you how we got to remember how consistently, again, or how consistent Oklahoma State has been. But, yeah, I mean, popping that back up, TCU obviously made the playoff last year, so they don't have that asterisk next to them. But had they not made it, then you'd be saying the same thing about them, of just how remarkably consistent they've been for as long as they have been. They've been a tremendous program that, has made it through the waters of various, leagues, and then finally found their way to the Big 12 and had a little bit of a, hard start there, as most teams do, just adjusting. But, I mean, give them a few years and they've got themselves right there to the top of playing in the national championship game. I mean, that program and their ascent just over time has been pretty incredible. I mean, just how consistent they've been, and all of the various alleys they've ran through to find their spot ultimately in the Big 12. There's so much more potential there for the Frogs. But the rest of that list, I mean, yeah, that's, hey, name the top programs in the country any given year, and that's pretty much the list right there. You might change around one or two, but I don't know, the last 20 years or so, or since 2014 especially, yeah, that's the list. The only concerning part on there to me is Oklahoma's record, and not concerning, but looking at it from Oklahoma perspective, that's a lot of winning without any national titles. I mean, that's the thing that has continued to elude them since they won it with Bob Stoops in his second year, and they played for it a bunch of times, and they played for it a few times since 2014, but that's the one hump that they just cannot seem to get over, is winning that national title.
The game when they let Georgia back in it,
yeah,
that was the one time, and of course Georgia was explosive, but they seem to have that kind of in play. But there's been a couple of pooped on themselves in a couple of the national championship games, with all due respect to the teams like LSU, Florida, and of course USC, who beat them. So there's the list: best record, AP top 25 since 2014, when the college football playoff began. It is 3:44. This is 365 Sports. Jacob Zeno, Kyron Drones, right? Gary Bohannon. These are former Baylor quarterbacks. Drones is having a pretty good run with Trent Dilfer at UAB. Not Drones. Zeno's had a pretty good run with UAB. Kyron Drones looks like he's splitting time right now with Virginia Tech. And, of course, Gary Bohannon has not played that I know of for USF, and last year had a chance and then was injured. Would you take any of those three right now to be the quarterback who were on the roster, but then Bohannon won the job, then Shapen won the job, so Bohannon leaves, as you would expect, and Zeno had the one bright moment in the Big 12 championship game in 2019.
Literally made a throw, and people thought, oh, my God, he's the starting quarterback, and how dare you say otherwise? It's like he made one throw.
And they chanted his name when Charlie's last year, which went to hell for Baylor.
Is there an overlap from the people who seem to have these arguments over and over again? Like, is it the fan crowd and the quarterback, the backups always? Do you think there's an overlap there of just Baylor never makes the right decision, and I'm always the guy that has the better opinion on who should be the quarterback, what uniforms they should wear? I think a lot of people that said one thing in 19 probably changed their mind in 21, and then wanted Shapen in 22. And then, man, I wish Gary was still here because of the kind of offense they run. Yeah, there's just a lot of, like, Zeno should be the guy, and then it was very little evidence as to why. The Bohannon argument you can make. I mean, at least last year, like, they probably should have kept Gary Bohannon, and he should have probably been the starter, quite frankly. They should have at least
personality
played that out.
Yeah.
They should have played that out. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know where Zeno was going to fit in ultimately. I don't know where Drones was going to fit in. I mean, he just wasn't ready, and he's not quite all the way ready at Virginia Tech either. So to answer whatever, I mean, are you asking would you take them over Blake Shapen? Is that what you're asking?
No,
or?
I just threw out names. They're all over the place, you know. I mean, a lot of quarterback rooms like Oklahoma State, you asked what Sanders is doing. And again, Alabama, all these, even the big boy schools are having players who leave. It is, you have to find a way to juggle your quarterback room, and it's so difficult because everybody wants a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to do. I'm just glad those guys had opportunities. Otherwise, they would have just played out their college careers, you know, on a bench or dropping down a significant level probably. And instead, they're at USF, they're at UAB, they're at respectable schools, and they're getting playing time, and, you know, especially in Zeno's case, Virginia Tech for Drones. But yeah, the only one that I go, oh, man, that one was probably a mistake is Gary Bohannon. I think he should have closed out his career at Baylor. I think he should have been the starter probably at the beginning of last year, and if not, he would at least have been a reliable guy to pitch to when things were going sideways. But I don't look at Zeno and go, man, what could have been there really? And I don't look at Drones that way either. That was just those were the situations, like you said, that happen all over the country that something's got to give. Like only one guy can play at a time, and they weren't lined up to play, and they certainly weren't you know, clearly better than the guy that was chosen over them. So they were going to have to wait, and that's not what you do as a quarterback these days. So I'm glad that they've got these rules that they can go and play somewhere else.
2 Big 12 appearances, 19 and 21, created quarterback controversies, right? Because Zeno made a throw or two, and then Charlie went out. And the next year, of course, they were not very good at all at 2 and 7. And then Shapen and was brilliant. And they may not win that game if it wasn't for him in the first half. And then, of course, he had the shoulder injury, and they didn't do much in the second half, which led to the quarterback change in the spring.
I would also say that in the Sugar Bowl, I thought Gary Bohannon had played himself either into the transfer portal or to a different position.
Oh, it's understandable how that happens.
No, you're right. That's a great point.
Like in the Sugar Bowl, Gary Bohannon, who was, I mean, like an unquestioned leader on the team and everybody was behind him, but he played against one of the better teams they played all year, one of the worst games a quarterback can ever play, and if not for a defensive near-perfect game that they had, you know, we're probably talking about that season a lot differently, but the defense, you know, outplayed every, you know, problem their quarterback had in that game. So, you know, that's not surprising. And look, you know, Jacob Zeno's playing at UAB. He's having a nice year, but he also wasn't ready. He's probably playing in the conference that he needs to be playing in right now. And Kyron Drones hasn't broken through yet. Now, if 2 years from now he winds up, you know, leading Virginia Tech out of the darkness and looking really good, then they might regret that, give it a long-term thing. But right now, I mean, are they better than Blake Shapen is today? Probably not.
I'll say this about Gary. I mean, that Sugar Bowl was ugly. It's just it was masked by, like you said, great defense and also Ole Miss's quarterback getting hurt. But that was Baylor defense that forced that to happen. They knocked him out of the game. But let's also remember, Gary wasn't 100% healthy in that game either. They had no other choice. Blake Shapen had gotten hurt and was out, like out, and could not play. Gary Bohannon had been hurt, had the hamstring. You remember that?
Yeah.
And so he had to come back, and I don't think he was 100% healthy. But, yeah, I mean, that was a game that really exposed the flaws that he had in the passing game. Like, if he had to just rely on being able to pass the football, it was not going to be the prettiest offense in the world. And, you know, Ole Miss probably deserves some credit for that as well. But, yeah, that's one that you can point to. And that was one that, you know, only got brought up because they struggled. And so once they struggled, it's like, all right, who's to blame? Well, Bohannon should have been the quarterback. But, you know, again, he's gone off, and it's not like he set the world on fire, but I do think he should have closed his career at Baylor. That's something that I do wish would have changed. The other guys, I think it worked out, you know, the way that it was supposed to.
Yeah, it's interesting that they had those 2 games. It was great to be a part of those 2 games if you're a Baylor football player, coaching staff, the university fan base, and yet it kind of fueled a little bit of it. And absolutely during the 2020 disaster when you started hearing Zeno's name being called out when Brewer and the offense could do nothing. Let's see, from UT parking back on the Michigan State name, Sean Lewis is going to be in demand, but don't take the Michigan State job. They expect conference championships, yet that conference is suddenly loaded, not only with what you have with Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, maybe Wisconsin kind of gets their act together with Fickell, and then you add into the mix Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. Man. And Lewis should be wait and see what happens maybe at other places. In fact, even UT Parking mentioned Houston as an option.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan State's such a bigger job than Houston, though. But I can see why the path is easier. But I don't know, like, what's the playoff structure?
That's right.
I mean, is it going to be harder to win a Big Ten title? Maybe, but is it going to be the same as trying to get into the playoff? And that's really ultimately what your big goal is. Then that might not be that much of a deterrent. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough to win a Big Ten title in comparison to the last several years, because there's a few teams now that are going to be throwing their weight around as well. And obviously USC looks really good right now, and UCLA's in good shape with Chip Kelly and so on. Oregon and Washington are obviously very good. So yeah, that's going to be a much more crowded party than it was before. But that's a good job. Like, they clearly have to clean up the behind the scenes a bit and figure out if they've got all of the demons out at this point up there in East Lansing. But yeah, that's going to be a job that I think a lot of people are interested in. And Sean Lewis is certainly a name that is going to be brought up, I think, with almost every job probably that pops open at this point. I don't know. Haven't learned enough about the guy to know what his leanings are as far as like getting back into head coaching. I mean, he left head coaching to be the OC for Dion. Is that really just entertaining enough and rewarding enough right now to see this thing out for a couple more years? I don't know where his head's at, but yeah, certainly he's going to be a hot name in this carousel no matter what the job is. And that Michigan State job is a big job.
It is.
And that's one that's really, now got the wheels in motion for this wacky carousel that we all love every season.
Retired stockbroker, looking back at what we discussed about Ryan Day, I have no problem with Ryan Day taking up for his team. Saban or Kirby Smart would have fried Lou Holtz.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt it was kind of random. I just felt like it was random coming across to people that maybe weren't paying super close attention. I have no problem with the guy sticking up for his team. I just was caught off guard by just like, wait, Ryan Day's what? And Lou Holtz? And And where did that come from? And why? And why was that like one of the first things he thought of after a huge win like that? Like, of all the things going through your head, it's like, Lou Holtz. Yeah. I was just like, what? It was just weird. And so, yeah, no problem with a guy standing up for his squad by any means. That's not what the reaction was towards.
I just think it's weird, like, that people take these things out of context and like, what is Lou Holtz going to say in South Bend to like on the Pat McAfee show out in the they're in the maw of Notre Dame fans and these students and I'm like, is Lou Holtz going to go up there like, oh no, I think that Notre Dame's going to roll over, no, he's
all right. When was game day's at like 10 o'clock in the morning?
Well, this was on Friday.
Oh, okay.
So this is on Friday during McAfee's show.
Okay, yes.
So right. Yeah, he's on Friday. They're out and hanging out on campus. Everything's cool, and then it's just.
You mean to tell me that was a motivator for the team at Ohio State University?
Okay, yeah. Do we cover the same sport?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Have you ever seen how low college football coaches will go to find motivation? Of course it was motivation.
Yeah, we've seen it with other schools.
I think the weird thing is him, like the coach, like usually the coach using it as motivation knows it's BS, right?
Yeah.
Dion knows most of the stuff he says is BS. Lou Holtz, when he was doing this, a lot of the things he would do, it's BS. You know the story I like to tell about Bill Self and getting Devontae Graham all fired up because Baylor had watched their, basketball porno that they were throwing up there about, look how great Kansas is.
Yeah.
Like, he knew it was BS. What's surprising is that Ryan Day doesn't know that what he said to them is just drivel. It's just whatever
he probably does, but
is going to. Like, Kirby Smart was the best at it, convincing his team that nobody thought they could do it.
Yeah.
He knew, like, the whole time I'm sure he's saying that, I was like, I'm sure he's thinking, like, nobody's going to believe me, right? And then they bought it, and he's like, all right, whatever works.
Nobody believed in us.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's great that he stood up for his team. I just think a lot of people are left confused that aren't following this super. Like, what did Lou Holtz say? Like, when did he say? Like, I mean, if you're not like on the story, then you're seeing these little bits and pieces coming across, and you're just like, why? It just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I mean, if you look in, it makes sense, and he stood up for his team, and if you buy into that, that's great, and if not, that's great too. Like, if you're a Michigan fan, I'm sure you thought it was stupid. If you're an Ohio State fan, you thought it was great, and so long as the players in the locker room thought it was great, and they felt like their coach was sticking up for them, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what we think about it. It doesn't matter at all what we think about it. If the Buckeye players and those involved in that team think that it was a motivator and it was him sticking up for them, and now they're going to unleash holy hell on the rest of the college football world, then it got the job done, and that's all that really matters.
His team was called soft.
Yeah.
And you can use that, and that was the deal. It wasn't that Lou Holtz picked Notre Dame. It's that he mentioned that they were soft.
Yeah, it was what he said about them. Yeah, that's the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, in the 4 o'clock hour, around the corner, we have Brett McMurphy on many things college football. Ricky Thompson at 4:30, Baylor sideline reporter. And then former Baylor linebacker Taylor Young on many things. He was a part of a team that was going south in a hurry and how they stuck together. Also that. And we'll also hear from Sam Kahn on the A&M coaching story with Wigman out for the rest of the year. And this is 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, and now in downtown Waco on Franklin Avenue. So 2 locations to serve you. Still the same great customer service at both places. The same great variety, just maybe kind of a different focus. So downtown, they're about what's going on. What are the cool, hip cocktails that you're seeing on social media? That's where they kind of focus on in the downtown location. At the OG, the original location with a fantastic drive-through window, they focus on the local craft bourbons, the craft beers. And look, it is autumn. October is coming around the corner. So that means your Oktoberfest beers and your autumn brews are there now. They're always churning the roster at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and downtown Waco, 2 locations to serve you with Riverbend Liquor and Wine.
The right call can make all the difference on and off the field. I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. When it's time for a new car, truck, or SUV, Bird Colgan Ford is the right call. Come check out our award-winning lineup of best-selling models in their class, like the Mustang, Explorer, Expedition, F-150, and Super Duty. Make the right call for your next vehicle at Bird Colgan Ford. Bird Colgan Ford proudly supports Baylor Athletics. Sic 'em Bears.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
We start this 4 o'clock hour, Brett McMurphy, Action Network HQ, college football insider, and someone who was very much involved in a lot of what happened with the change in college football the last year or two with his reporting, including the addition to the Big 12. Brett, thanks for your time. I absolutely love the McMurphy's Law. It's a great weekly piece. For those who don't know about it, they should. It's fantastic. And the interesting one about with Oklahoma State and how consistent they've been, yet they're the ones that remain outside the box when it comes to winning records, top 25 college football playoff. And it just goes to show you, man, you got to take advantage of opportunities when you have them.
Yeah, you really do. I mean, obviously you can look back, for Cowboy fans, Baylor probably kept them out of the playoffs with that goal line stop. There's still some debate whether Oklahoma State would have got in over Cincinnati. People that I talked to thought that Oklahoma State would because of their strength of schedule. But we'll never know because OSU couldn't score, more than 3 points on, 75 plays inside the 20. Not that I'm bitter or anything, isn't Oklahoma State a lot. And then you had the missed field goals against Iowa State that went over the crossbar and maybe was good, maybe wasn't good. So, yeah, Oklahoma State got close. They've been consistent. Gundy's taken them to 16 or 17 consecutive bowls, which is pretty amazing. Young OSU fans don't realize how bad Oklahoma State was before Gundy got there. Obviously, Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas were a couple of the highlights, but not many highlights other than that. And then this year, I don't know what to think. I mean, I was at Big 12 Media Day. I don't know if you guys have had Robert Allen on the show before, but he's a longtime color analyst at Oklahoma State. I was at Oklahoma State when he was there, so I talked to him often. And he was talking to me about the outlook for the season, and I'm like, man, I don't know what to think. I go, our Action Network projections has Oklahoma State at maybe 4 wins. He goes, 4? They're going to win 8. I go, dude, all I'm telling you is what the numbers say they're going to be underdogs in 8 games. And he's like, who? And I went through the list. He goes, we'll take care of that. I'm like, I hope you're right. Now, impressive win against Arizona State. They looked god-awful against South Alabama. They made Iowa State's offense look like USC with Lincoln Riley. I mean, they could still go 7-5, but you know what? They could go 2-10. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what in the world is going on. They're off this week. Then they jump back into Big 12 play. But I think the goal streak is going to be seriously tested this year if the Pokes can get to 6 wins or not.
Brett, some scuttlebutt coming out of Clemson, South Carolina about that maybe the Tigers have figured out a way out of the grant of rights or that a decision could be coming in October. Are you hearing any rumblings on the ACC right now?
I mean, what was reported, it's basically they're saying specifically it's going to happen in October. I have not been told that. I've been told previously that, yes, Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, those guys are going to attempt to get out of the ACC. They are going to notify that they are leaving the ACC. The only thing I've never had is a specific timetable. So if it is October, great scoop by I think Post Courier newspaper reported that. Great scoop by them. I have not been able to confirm that. Bottom line is, in 3 years, those schools are not going to be in the ACC. The question is, where are they going to be? And how are they going to find a way out of the grant of rights? And how much money is it going to cost them? I do know from talking to people at various schools around the league, they think there is a way out of the so-called ironclad grant of rights. I do know from talking to people within the ACC, they feel like the grant of rights is ironclad and nobody's going to get out. Ultimately, everything gets settled. This is a little bit different, as you know, because of the grant of rights is still, played out for 12, 13 more years, where it's different for any other conference when a school left, where you have 1, 2, maybe 3 years tops. So this is a totally different animal. I don't think the ACC is simply going to say, okay, write us a check, you can go. But I do think look, it's no secret they know these guys are going to leave at some point. We'll see if it's October. And I do think that's why I was told this. That's why they added, as I like to call them, Calford and SMU, because they're filling up. Because if they go below 14 schools or 15 schools, including Notre Dame, then ESPN can renegotiate their TV deal. So do you want to add schools now when you actually have an opportunity to get some Group 5 schools, even if they are on the left coast? Or do you wait until the last minute and then who knows what's available, and you're basically, picking some corpses from the Americans?
Brett, as
no
you know,
offense to the Americans.
Brett, as you know, there's always flickers of realignment talk, and obviously anything with the ACC to what you're suggesting would open up a whole new can of worms for everybody. But as you best understand it right now, we were talking about this article that Max Olson and The Athletic had about just deep diving into the Big 12 and how all that unfolded with picking up the Pac schools. You see from time to time, like, well, what about Oregon State and Washington State, and would they fit? And what is your understanding about where the Big 12 finds itself currently? And is there anything to wanting more of the West with either of those two schools? Where do you think their position is right now on further expansion?
Regarding Oregon State and Washington State, I can sum up the Big 12 interest in 2 words: no and no. I mean, they're not going to do it. They're fine. They're fine at 16. Now, if some things happen with the ACC, that's a different matter. We see where the schools scatter to. Obviously, they're going to look to go to the Big Ten and the SEC. But after a lot of those schools move, I think, again, this is old school me thinking geography actually matters. But I think a great fit geography-wise, if they could bring on Pitt and Louisville. I mean, if you make the backyard brawl a Big 12 game, I mean, but is one of the best rivalries in college football. Louisville and Cincinnati, located very close. That would be a great rivalry too. So if some teams start, leaving from the ACC and then teams are looking for a way out, then I think the Big 12 will look to go beyond 16. As far as Oregon State and Washington State, absolutely not. If they wanted to do that, they would have already done it. They wouldn't have waited until now to do it. And also, there is a narrative out there. Well, they need to help, not necessarily the Big 12, but anybody. They need to help these teams out. They shouldn't be left in the, by themselves. Well, look, you got to worry about yourself. And that's kind of one of the problems with college football is everybody's in their own silo and they're doing what's best for your conference. The Big 12 is going to do what's best for the Big 12, the SEC, what's best for the SEC, et cetera. And so when that happens, you see some crazy realignment. And now you've got Oregon State and Washington State. Who knows what's going to happen with them next year? Are they going to have a 2-team conference with the winner getting a bid to the college football playoff? I know the commissioners met today. They kicked the can down the road a little bit more because they can't make a decision because they don't know what the league's going to look like. But from your initial question, no Cougars and no Beavers for the Big 12.
Brett, why are college coaches so angry today?
I think they've all got rabbit ears, and I think they're very sensitive to things, and everything now is out there on social media. And before social media, if a fan base was upset, or you had people upset, or players were upset, you maybe heard it from that player, or maybe you heard it when you ran into a specific fan or something. If you ran into them in a grocery store or something, now everybody's got a voice, and so all these coaches, they're busting their ass. They're working 25 hours a day. And then all they're seeing is people are mad because they're not winning games by enough. They're not impressive enough. They're not covering the spread, yada, yada, yada. And now they're pushing back. I think a lot of that, is obviously the pressure of being paid that much money. And, it's not the old days where you'd have 2 or 3 years to work something out. A lot of these guys got 1 year to turn this thing around, especially now with the transfer portal. And so I think it's just everybody's, a little bit more sensitive to everything. And these coaches are going to push back and fight back. And kind of what I wrote today about, these coaches are going to use every bit of motivation they can, whether it's real, whether it's, whether they grab it out of thin air. they're going to do whatever they can to get their team jacked up. And, you know, they could care less if it's true or not. All they know is they can tell their football team A, B, and C, and hopefully that'll get the team to run through the proverbial brick wall.
Brett, are you surprised that Alabama has found itself in the predicament, and now, even though they had a nice little rally last week and appear to have buoyed their season after the Ole Miss win, but still they haven't solved all their problems?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people questioned Alabama this year, and you know, look, it's funny you asked me that question. They have one loss, they're in the top 12 or 13, and we're like, what the hell's wrong with Alabama? But that's what happens. I mean, and that's why Nick Saban, without question, is the greatest college coach of all time. And I'm not an Alabama homer or anything like that, but that's the reality. I don't even think people appreciate what a great job he's done. I think, unfortunately, we're not going to realize it until his career's done. And then we look back and say, wait, he was ranked number 1 for 12 consecutive seasons. Wait, he never fell out of the top, 15, except for 99% of the week that there were AP polls. Certainly you look at where they are with quarterbacks. They've won with subpar quarterbacks in the past, but that with a combination of a new offensive coordinator and some key losses, defensively also, and you lose Bryce Young, obviously Will Anderson on defense. Now Alabama seems more mortal-like maybe than they have in the past. But you know what? Guess what? They still control their destiny in the SEC. Their loss is out of conference. That's the good news. The bad news is they can't lose again because the 14 playoff is not going to invite a two-loss team, even if it's Alabama. But, don't put dirt on Bama's grave yet, because, they've done it before when people doubt him. And, I would not bet against Saban, but certainly they do look more gettable. I agree with you than maybe in past years. And I think part of it is the lack of star power on offense, specifically at quarterback and wide receiver.
Part of me feels like Saban couldn't be happier that this is the situation that they have to work through some of these things. I think he probably enjoys that to some extent.
Yeah. He's always a heavy favorite. Now every day, nobody's giving us a chance. Everybody's doubting us. He's banging that drum every day.
So, Brett, how attractive do you think the Michigan State job will be for potential coaches out there?
Attractive in that you're in the Big Ten and you're going to be at a school that's going to be making close to $100 million in a few years with your media rights deal, and you're going to be on NBC, CBS, and Fox, and all those things. Look, it's obviously, you're starting over from scratch, but with the transfer portal, you can come in and you can change things right away. The challenge for whoever takes over Michigan State is, this is could be similar to how when Deion came to Colorado, except Deion kicked everybody out of Colorado he didn't want. I think if you're at Michigan State, and you're going to be fleeing before you even know who the next coach is going to be, because to get any kind of coach that's a name, and you guys have seen all the lists out there, you're not going to get any of those guys until early December, mid-December, depending on their status as far as the playoffs or New Year's Six games or whatever. And so how many of those Michigan State kids that can play are going to wait around from that? I mean, they're probably right now, making their plans for the next stop. So, yeah, you can do a Deion and bring in a whole new roster to kind of build up your program. But I think it's going to be a tougher build for whoever comes in there. But look, it's a Big Ten job. They're going to get a ton of folks because of what that job will pay and the resources you have in there. That's the good news. The bad news is you have more bodies to climb over. USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington. So, forget about, competing with Michigan and Ohio State. Now you got potentially, 2 to 3 more top 25, top 30 teams every year that you're going to be competing with. But ultimately, surprise, surprise, like everything else related to college athletics, it'll depend on money, and Michigan State will have plenty of money to throw at the next guy.
Let me ask you, I had to ask this, Brett. They had this college football playoff meeting, whatever, and they knew that the Pac-12 was unsure of what they were going to do with the Pac-2. Why didn't they just cancel the meeting? Was there really anything they expected to get done?
Well, they also meet about other things, not specifically that. So
Okay.
it's a regular scheduled meeting. So it's on the books that they meet periodically throughout the year. So, they talked about other things. There's a million minutia things, possibly, future playoff sites, bowl agreements as far as the New Year's Six, TV rights going forward with the 12-team playoff. So this wasn't simply hey, what are we going to do access-wise for the 12-team playoff? There's a lot of other things going on.
Brett, as always, thank you. Great stuff. Action Network HQ, our go-to, one of the national analysts who does an incredible job and with us whenever we can possibly get him. Thank you, Brett. Have a great week.
Hey.
Thank you, Brett McMurphy. On many things. So, wait a minute, Craig. Did you ask him about the possibility of the Pac-2 and the Big 12 or 16 or whatever they're called?
Yeah, I just, you see little flickers of that pop up. And, obviously we got a lot of Beavers and Cougars fans and not wanting to pour, water all over their fire. But let's, definitely want to be truthful and realistic as possible about what's going on. And I just straight up asked him there if the Big 12 would have any interest. And he said as clear as day, no and no. No interest. And the big thing we all can circle back to is, why would you not have done it already? You went and grabbed 4 of their teams. Why would you not have done that at the same time? That's the part that never has made any sense. Oh, no, now we want it. No, and especially the ACC thing doesn't make it more likely. It makes it less likely because now if you're going to go add teams, you're looking at the Eastern Coast, and that will all be predicated upon whatever happens with Florida State and Clemson. Like that's where all eyes should be on, that part of the country. What do those ACC teams that could potentially get out do? When do they do it? How do they do it? What's the timeline of that? And then, all hell breaks loose, and then you can have everybody running to pick up whatever the other pieces are. And I agree with him. Like Louisville joining the Big 12 should have happened about 20 years ago and could have. And things went differently. What?
No, go ahead.
Well, you're putting your hand up.
Because I have a point to make when you're done.
Well, Louisville was, a team that the Big 12 could have had a long time ago and didn't get that done. And, I think probably regretted that as all these other things have happened over the course of the last couple of decades. But, yeah, the Oregon State, Washington State, I hate to be a party pooper, but, again, want to be truthful, and there's nothing to that. There's nothing whatsoever to that in the Big 12.
When there was still uncertainty about the Big 12 adding anybody new from the Pac-12, I believe Colorado was already a done deal. And we were able to talk to a lot of different Big 12 ADs, even a couple of different presidents. And I remember a conversation that was off air one time with the Big 12 administrator that when they said, well, you just never know what might happen. We're monitoring the ACC because that might pop at some point. And the school that was mentioned immediately was Louisville because, it would make sense. They're a really good athletic department. That's a nice school. Obviously, the Pitt, West Virginia connection would be interesting, but Louisville was immediately mentioned, not as somebody on the radar, but somebody that quickly would be on the radar if that ever was to be available, if they were ever to be available.
Yeah, and, this is tenuous times for the ACC, and, I know that with the Big 10 at 18, there seems to be this push for everybody to try to get to 18 next, but that's going to depend on the media partners making all that work. Like right now, they're making it work because they had contracts that, said to, but you're probably going to see that next wave come a few years down the line, except for what could happen with the ACC in the interim because they still have a long contract and everything that's going on with Clemson and Florida State. So, yeah, the Oregon State and Washington State thing is getting pushed around the internet right now, and yes, Sergeant Pickles, they deserve better than the hand they were dealt.
Absolutely,
for sure. He said that
100%.
They deserve better, but just the reality of the situation is that the Big 12 does not have interest in them because, believe me, they probably would have said yes before anybody else, given the fact that they knew that they didn't have those other options, which is why the two of them were fighting so hard to. They're like, yes, Apple deal. Let's just do it. Go. Apple. We'll make it work. And, they didn't. And speaking of the Apple deal, the one thing that just occurred to me that I wanted to mention earlier about that article was
article in The Athletic by Max
Olson. When when Kliavkoff was telling them that they could make, $100 million a year or whatever it was, and he said, well, Robert Robbins, the president of Arizona, is like, well, if we only have 1.8 million living alumni among the conference, how do we get all of them to do this so we get, to pay $100 a year for this? Mm-hmm. Even at 100%, they would have still fallen short of their goals.
Oh, yeah, that was the part that was like, that was a wish that, well, if everybody signs up, then we're going to make $100 billion. And it was like, but especially when you're talking about a conference where the participation rate is probably the lowest of any of the conferences.
Stanford is in that conference.
Right, exactly.
So bring in international students from all over that are don't even care about American sports.
Talking about their alumni base, and it's like their alumni base doesn't care. Like that's great. They have a huge endowment. That doesn't mean that they're going to sign up for Apple TV. That part never made any sense of like, well, there's a bunch of people, so they're like, let's just assume they'll all vote for it. And it's like, most of them don't even watch football at some of these institutions. So, yeah, that was more of just like trying to paint the rosiest picture possible and just hoping that would be, the outcome that would occur and would be convincing enough to, sway those schools to sign on up and be like, yeah, well, let's just ride on potential. But, others were smart enough to go like, well, no, we know we'll make this here, and we know who will be playing, and we know for a fact that this is what it is. This other stuff is all just wish casting, basically. And so, yeah, it turned into what it turned into, and I think that it landed where it was supposed to as far as those schools didn't get locked into a really bad deal because that deal still doesn't look like it was all that great, and a lot of it was, like, hey, if all of the Stanford folks who don't right now care about football suddenly do, and Cal and everywhere else, and they all decide we don't not just care about, or not only do we now care about football more than we ever have, we care about football so much we're going to go pay monthly services to watch all these games for this conference, then yeah, it could have worked out differently. But again, that just wasn't realistic, and that didn't make sense.
Robert Robbins had the best analogy of the Apple deal. Was there some validity to it? Sure. But he compared it to like when I was a kid, playing Pop Warner football, we would be given these boxes of chocolate bars, and we had to go sell a couple of boxes and then bring the money back that would help pay for whatever it was. That's what they would have to do. That's basically what they have to do. Go door to door, send out mass email, and hope that people are interested. It didn't work out, and it would have been the deal had it not been for Oregon and Washington at the last possible second doing what they did and saying, and even calling Robbins and saying, hey, we are going to join the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I would have thought that it's not surprising that those two were the first ones that were like, yeah, this isn't. When you've got, especially when you're Washington, you think about not only do you have your alumni base, but you're in, one of the bigger cities in Seattle there, and you've got to like, okay, well, if everybody who likes Washington and Seattle signs up, we'll make this much money. And okay, well, what about people who don't care and just want to watch a Washington game sometimes? Are they going to sign up for that, or is that just going to be a thing where, oh, the Washington game's on Apple TV this week, I guess I gotta go to a buddy's house. Like, those are the things you don't like take into account. And 1.8 million living alumni, and to get to the levels, they would have had to sell like basically they would have to like duplicate all those people a few times over.
Camelo, could they have asked the networks if it was beneficial financially to add Oregon State, Washington State? If not, that may be why they didn't add them. No, that's exactly why.
Yeah.
They had a chance to go. They already went for the kill with the four schools, including Colorado first and then the others. But had they had an opportunity, if that was legitimate, if the networks, ESPN, Fox, or whoever had said, no, go ahead and add them too, we're going to take care of you, then there was a possibility.
Yeah, if they had interest, the TV networks, then those teams would be a part of the Big 12. They would have worked something out. They would have, we talked at length about the pro rata when all the teams were being added originally, and how there was room for this amount of teams and what that meant for Fox, what that meant for ESPN, and we went through all of that stuff there over the last few months. But yeah, I mean, Carmelo, if they had, ESPN or Fox said, you know what, we'll pony up for two more. We want two more. We want two more out on the West Coast that'll give us these late night windows and all those different kinds of things. If they had ponied up and said, we want Washington State and Oregon State in the Big 12, they'd be in the Big 12. But they clearly were like, we're tapped out. We got what we wanted. We got those four corner schools. and the Big 12 got what they wanted, and that's the amount of money that we're going to pay, and that's all we're going to pay, and that's it, and that's why it's it, and that's what it boiled down to. But if the TV networks had ponied up, then sure, they'd be in there, but they're not going to do that, clearly.
Immaculate in the chat room. It's a new situation now, David Smoak. We already know what was said in the past. I never thought Washington State, Oregon State had a chance in the Big 12 until they massively disrupted college football playoff business. It's a new situation because of why?
Because they're winning. No, it's not. Look, sadly, winning has nothing to do with this.
I hate it for those two schools.
No, look, winning has very little to do with any of this, especially winning in a short time span of
Boise State.
A season. Yeah, like winning, like Boise State had they're a little more up and down than they've been the last couple of years, but they had like a 15, 20-year run of constantly winning, and nobody said, like, man, we got to get them in. Like, we got to rope them in.
Too small. Not enough eyeballs or whatever,
That's the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is not that Oregon State and Washington State are two damn good football teams and they're programs that care. The reality of the situation is that 100 years ago when the universities were built, they built them in Pullman, Washington, and Corvallis, Oregon, and those places did not grow to the same level that some of the other places did. That's the unfortunate truth of it, and it's not about winning. So that stinks.
St. Dominic's Rosary, I totally disagree. The Apple deal would have worked out in the long run because streaming is where everything is going. They don't have a long run. Now, this was immediate. This was like imminent. This was important like now. It'd be like being trapped under something and you're like, hey, we'll get you in 2 or 3 months and there's no oxygen left.
Well,
they didn't have a long run.
Athletic departments make budgets multi-years out. So when you have a TV deal that guarantees you, say, $31.6 million a year, like the Big 12 does, you can budget that out knowing that you're going to get that money. The problem with the Apple deal wasn't was that it wasn't going to be a good idea in the long run because Apple TV actually, I think of all of them long term, might have the best handle on it because they are Apple. But
I'd say right now for sure. I don't know who else would even really be. Like HBO Max isn't ready to roll out. Netflix is nowhere near that.
Yeah, it's like Apple ads, they have their own programming, but they're not they're not making bargain bin movies like Netflix is, right? They're not doing the CVS movies that you would get, right? So there are so many different things in that, but they would not know. So they're going to get $23 million, but they might get $50. Well, you can't budget for that 50. Then you can't do that. You can't run the athletic department not knowing year to year that you're, like you said, Smokey, that Robert Robbins said, selling candy bars. You just couldn't rely on it. It's a great deal for Apple, and it might be a great deal down the line, and we might see a ton of people do it down the line. But right now, network TV is where all the money is, and they weren't on network TV at all.
Kim Coulter, $1.99 super chat. Thank you, sir. McMurphy was excellent. Well done, fellas. Immaculate because they were winning. Speaking of Oregon State, Washington State, don't put words in my mouth. Then why? Why would there be interest? We've gone over this. We just, I think, explained it. And Immaculate, don't take it personal that I hate it for those two schools. I really do.
We're not taking any joy in saying, Brett McMurphy said what he said, so those are his words, but just passing along what he said, and it was very clear. Does the Big 12 have any interest in Oregon State and Washington State? No and no. And he explained a little bit of why and also explained that if it were to have happened, it would have happened already. That's his thoughts. He's as dialed in as I think most anybody is at this point with conference realignment, and that's all there is to it. We've made our position very clear. We'd love to see Oregon State and Washington State get an opportunity. We'd love to see them get an opportunity in the Big 12, but we're not going to just pretend like reality is not reality. Wow. And look, I understand. I got a message, too, about, you have information that could maybe change. That's great, but I'm just, I don't know. I tend to think that there's always a chance that something could happen, but this really feels like just really hanging on to a very minor thread and just hoping and hoping and hoping that it's going to, somehow work out. And I don't know. I'm just not a believer. I'm sorry.
A direct question from St. Dominic's Rosary about what I said about where those schools are located. So what's the difference between Washington State and Oregon State and Kansas, Iowa State, and BYU? Manhattan, Kansas, Ames, Iowa, not LA or New York last time I checked. The only difference is those teams already had a contract.
It's like
that's it.
The difference when you could add in Vanderbilt. In schools from the SEC, they were a part of it from the beginning. It's just something that it's unfortunate, the timing, And if something pops for Oregon State and Washington State with another conference, with an addition of another conference, with a merging or whatever it is, or if the ACC falls apart and there's an opening there, maybe. But, again, they're both fun to watch, no question. Immaculate, I have a ton of respect for you guys. Best show and best guest. I just can't explain the situation here in 200 bits with delayed reactions between chat and you guys. Well, just tell us. Why do you think things have changed for Oregon State and Washington State? And we will bring it up and read it. Thanks for your time. Coming up next, Ricky Thompson, former Baylor wide receiver, Baylor sideline reporter, and his thoughts after 1-3, UCF on the road, and the rest of the Big 12. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat Ted Teague GM and CEO of the location in Waco. And right now, the Jeep Adventure Days, 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited with $5,500, or how about 10% off MSRP on a 2023 Jeep Gladiator? All of the trim levels involved: Overland, Rubicon, Mojave. That's right. It's that good. Right now, the 2023 Jeep Compass, 10% off MSRP. The inventory is on the dealership grounds. Also, Ram Power Days going on right now. New 2023 1500 Lone Star 4x4 Crew Cab. Right now, $11,000 off MSRP or 2.9% financing for 72 months. The new 2023 1500 Laramie 4x4 Crew Cab, $12,500 off MSRP or 2.9% financing for 72 months. Jeep Adventure Days, Ram Power Days, the lot right there on Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Ingram at the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like instant issue debit cards free at all of our banking centers, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. This segment with former Baylor wide receiver and Baylor sideline analyst Ricky Thompson is sponsored by Alliance Bank Central Texas, where customers have confidence that their financial needs are in good hands with 2 locations in Waco, on Bosque Boulevard and on Archway Drive off Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com.
Ricky Thompson was on the field for that Texas 38-6 rout. Also on his way to Orlando later in the week as Baylor opens up road play, first road game of the year against UCF. Ricky, thanks for your time with Craig and Paul and me. Do you feel like getting on the road might be good?
I do. Smokey, I enjoyed playing on the road. I just think it's a different atmosphere. It really adds, I think, a little fire in your stomach when you hear that crowd, and particularly now after 4 in a row at home, when you've had the streak that we've had and the difficulties we faced, I think it's probably good to get away, get out on the road, be in the hotel with your team, have the flight, play in a different atmosphere. And sometimes I remember Texas Tech last year. Man, that was a road trip that at the time I don't think anybody expected, and you just blow those guys out. So, yeah, I do. I think it's a perfect time to get on the road, to tell you the truth.
Well, Ricky, kind of a similar situation. There's going to be a ton of pomp and circumstance, about this is their first Big 12 home game. The 2013 team is going to be back and being honored, much like Patrick Mahomes to a certain level. It's kind of the same thing for UCF as Texas Tech. So those guys are going to be back getting honored at this game. So it is ripe for a disappointment for UCF if they don't mind their P's and Q's.
Well, it is. And I think, I know in my case, and I bet you 3 guys too didn't expect what we saw in Lubbock. I mean, that was the perfect scenario for Tech. Night game, at home, blackout, honoring Patrick Mahomes, Baylor coming in for the first time to face Joey McGuire. If anything, you might have expected that to flow the other way at 45-17 versus the way it did. But sometimes when you get this much excitement or pressure included for a home team with this type game, it can be the reverse of circumstance. So I think that's what we hope for in this case.
Ricky, they had that opportunity at home this past weekend. There was a hot crowd and sold out and a lot of stakes in play. And we know the end result was Texas basically blowing that game open after 1 quarter of play. Did you look at that as more of like, well, this went wrong and this what's wrong? Or did you look at that mostly as like just Texas is just a better team, plain and simple? How did you kind of break down the loss last week?
I think it was a little of both. Number one, I think Texas is really good. Probably the best we've seen them since their Vince Young era, that period of time. I think, too, that we played into their hands a little bit as far as not playing that well, making some mistakes, getting inside the 26 or 7 times and kicking 2 field goals. I just think it was one of those perfect scenario nights where it just ended up being really tough. But, Craig, I just think it was both. I do think Texas is really good. I don't think they were that much better than we are when we're playing the way we should.
Ricky, we had Mac on yesterday, Mac Rhodes, and, of course, a lot of people uneasy right now. Everybody's probably angry, mad, frustrated, bitter, whatever else. But he didn't give out the proverbial, statement that he's got Dave Aranda's back, but he did say he has all the belief in the world in Dave Aranda as a head coach. What do you say? You're an alum, letter winner, and you're there watching the game about the uneasiness of Dave Aranda's future.
Well, I hate that for him. I know it puts a lot of pressure, and it's particularly probably for his family as much as anything. He's got kids that go to school here, and just him personally and wife and all. I hate that for them, and I think it's a little quick to be making those statements because we've got to throw a COVID year in this thing. And I know everybody uses that as an excuse, but in some form and fashion it is. But ultimately, we all know that this comes down to winning games. And that's where success is measured. I don't think that there's pressure to the extent of a job this year for Dave Aranda. I don't. But we all know eventually we've got to win again. You don't have to go 12-2 every year, but you also can't go 2-7, 6-7, and whatever this year could be if we don't flip this thing around. Those things stack up, and it gets frustrating. It's frustrating for the crowd. It gets frustrating for the players. I mean, I've been in those locker rooms during difficult years, and that is no fun, believe me. Even if you don't hear the outside noise, there starts to be some inside noise, and that's where you've really got an issue when that starts. And I think Dave's doing a good job of controlling that part of it and being isolated in that form, and I don't think he hears a lot of the outside stuff. But ultimately, guys, you got to win games, so we'll see where that goes.
Ricky, do you think that they have the talent on the roster right now to compete in the Big 12?
I do. I don't think they have the particular talent to win it right now, just opinion. But yes, I think they've got the talent to compete. And winning Saturday and then coming back against Tech, and you're 3-3, which I think both those games are winnable if we play. Blake coming back is going to be a big factor. We got a couple of defensive linemen coming back. We had some corners that were at. We actually played that game last week with 3 corners against probably the best receiving core in counting outside guys and tight ends that you'll see all year. And I think they showed that. They took advantage of it. So, specific answer, yeah, we've got the talent to compete. Don't know that it's 21 talent to win it, but I think you can get back there if you continue to recruit. And I've said this before, you watch those freshmen that did play in that football game Friday night, they were among some of the better players we had on the field. And those 2 corners, I think, have a tremendous future in Big 12 football.
Ricky, is it red flags galore if they're not able to run the football this weekend, just given that how much of Texas was Texas up front. That was part of the deal, of course. Also, it was Baylor's execution. But UCF is not known for being particularly stout. They've got some guys, but if they can't run the football this weekend, is that setting off a bunch of alarms for you?
Well, it's a concern. Absolutely. I think K-State had 281. Am I right? I think they had 281 yards rushing last week against UCF. Won that game 44-31. I know UCF has an outstanding receiver. I don't know if Plumlee's going to play or not. I kind of think maybe not. But they're talented offensively. If they've got a weak spot, it is on defense. And we know K-State tries to run the football, but when you rush for nearly 300, I think that's an indication that we better be able to run the football. I really like the idea of moving Neighbors to full-time running back. I don't know what y'all thought about him Saturday. I thought as far as quickness, hitting the line of scrimmage, and the ability to make guys miss and take it home, he looked really good. So I like that idea. I think Dominic should be healthy. Richard Grease, I don't know where he's been. Mm-hmm. I guess 3 carries last week. That's surprising. But, yes, I think the running game is very, very important. And let's see, too, what the difference, if Blake's back, which indications are he probably is, let's see what kind of difference that makes in getting the ball to these guys outside and in the seams in the middle of the football field where Sawyer struggles some with lack of experience. Let's see what that does, too. And those two, to me, work together. Running game plus throwing the ball in the middle of the field, I think those feed off each other. So, yes, I think running game is very important, and we better have one this weekend.
Ricky, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Ricky Thompson, former Baylor receiver, wide receiver, NFL with the Redskins at the time, and then now sideline reporter, has been for many years on the what moving forward. Craig, you brought that up, and Ricky just mentioned it about asking Dave Aranda next time I do have a chance to visit with him is why are the numbers of touches for Richard Reese so incredibly low? Yeah,
I just asked you that straight up on the show yesterday because I was like, if I don't ask now, and then I'll probably forget it before the next one, and then I'll have to wait another couple of weeks. But, yeah, what is going on there? Is he hurt? Just say he's hurt, Just say, hey, his ankle's bothering him or something, and then you don't get any more questions. Not that he's worried about the questions, but it just, it would shed some light, because otherwise, why is the Big 12, what was it, the freshman of the year, getting less than 10 carries per game? And last week, you could kind of see it because, well, it didn't matter who you had. You could have had Adrian Peterson back there, and he was getting 2.1 yards per carry at best against that Texas D-line, given the blocking. But, yeah, I mean, why is this guy he was the one guy in the preseason that, who's an all Big 12 guy? It was Richard Reese. Who's the preseason it was Richard Reese. There was nobody else. It was just him. And so, that's just very puzzling, and I'm curious to hear that. And I'm curious to see this weekend how much he's used. But, yeah, an injury would make sense, or just the inability to run the ball. You don't want to put more wear on his tires, because what was he going to do, though, if he did break up open a fourth quarter run against the Longhorns? Make it a 30-point game?
Yep.
So maybe it's just situational, but I am intrigued by what Aranda does have to say about that. And, yeah, if they can't run the football this weekend, then that's going to be a major cause for concern. It's already cause for concern, but even more so because K-State was, a different beast, of course, but DJ Giddens had just a monster day against the Knights. And our buddy Brandon Helwig, who we talked to, we asked him yesterday, how much of a concern is that the run defense? And he said it was, it's one of their major concerns. So there will be a lot to see this weekend in Orlando.
Retired stockbroker, $3.65, said,
Nice.
Many thanks for the entertainment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Northeast Ohio, Boise State fan. Aloha to you and the boys from Honolulu.
Oh.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you watching when you do. And Paxton, did I hear Ricky Wright saying that that's the best team since Vince Young in 2005? I think based on what he saw Saturday, it appears as if they could be in that. He's just kind of making the comment about best since then. Not sure he's saying that as good as that team in 05.
No, but I think people also forget the 09 team because they didn't win the title sometimes.
Yeah, no, they were good.
And that was a pretty dang good team that just lost to Alabama, and Colt McCoy got hurt, and they very well could have won a national title. Obviously, they played for it. But, since 05, I mean, that's obviously monster praise. That was nearly 20 years ago, guys. Vince Young ran to the end zone at the Rose Bowl nearly 20 years ago, guys.
God, has it been that long ago?
18 years ago.
Yeah.
How old do y'all feel?
Old.
I remember exactly where I was.
I don't need that example.
I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing at the time. But yeah, I mean, it's been a long time, so that's heavy to say that, given all of the roster turnover and changes and coaching changes and all the things that have taken place in that amount of time. But you know what? I agree with him. I think, going into the season, I was heavy on them. A lot of people were, but if you remember, the one thing I kept saying was, I don't think this is that typical preseason BS where you're just it's Texas, let's just default them to number one or number two. It's no, if you look at them, who's stopping this offense when they've got all the pieces, operating right, and the defense looks pretty salty as well. And sure enough, they've been on full display, and they're not perfect by any means, but they are clearly, one of the better teams in the country right now. And Red River, I know they've got a game to play before that. KU could very well knock them off this weekend, but Red River, if both of them going undefeated here in a couple weeks, that's going to be something else.
Yeah. All right, couple of notes. Garrett, I sent you a picture. Yesterday, the great Brooks Robinson passed away. This is a picture from back in the early 90s when he was in town to do a fundraiser in Tyler. The great Brooks Robinson, I had that picture. I know I have an autographed baseball. I could not find that because there's boxes of stuff like that, but wanted to show that picture. Had a chance. He was an absolute gentleman, stopped by to do the show. And yes, back then I was younger, a lot younger, and I also, I think, had hair.
I couldn't tell.
Oh, really? Is it kind of?
Oh, you look fine.
You aged so gracefully is what he's saying.
The picture I saw yesterday, and that's really awesome that you have that. That is, was him with his 17 or 18, whatever, gold gloves. And it was, I guess the Orioles took a picture of him when he was retired with the last one, and they just gotten down all the other ones and put them there on the field. He was one of the greatest defensive players of all time, maybe the greatest defensive third baseman of all time. There's only probably one or two other guys you can even put in the conversation with him.
Mike Schmidt. I do think
Adrian Beltre.
I think Beltre, and I think Buddy Bell was an incredibly good defensive player. Mm-hmm. He may not get the same. He was a pretty good offensive player, but Buddy Bell was smooth as silk. But I think Schmidt, Beltre and Brooks probably, and we might be missing one as far as the greatest third baseman. There's others, including both the offense and defensive side.
Dean Palmer.
There's a name from the past.
God, Beltre was actually at the Rangers game yesterday.
Is he really?
Yeah, he was out there. The King, Adrian Beltre. Yeah, he was hanging around, and cool to see him as they're in the midst of a playoff push. So I think he brings some good juju, or hope he does at least.
Yeah, hopefully he brings some healing to Corey Seager's forearm.
By the way, though, an aside, Wyatt Langford, have y'all seen what he's been doing?
Yeah.
He was their number one pick in the draft, and he's already up to AAA in 2 months' time. He's just flown through the minor leagues, and he's batting like 350 plus with like tons of doubles. And, he's already gone through low A ball, like a couple rounds of that, single A, double A, and he's already up to AAA already. And he was drafted in, what was that, May? So, he's flying through the system and is already one of the top prospects in baseball. But, he's not going to help right now. He can't be on a playoff roster or anything, but he's going to crack that franchise like pretty quickly, it looks like, the trajectory that he's on. That's a stressful situation right now, Paul. And I don't know. I guess you'd rather be involved in stress than not be involved at all.
You talking about trying to get to the playoffs?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and just dealing with injuries and things like that could, sidetrack you.
So Seager get hit by a pitch?
Yeah, on the forearm. He stayed in the game for a little while, and then
I didn't watch. I couldn't watch. I looked up. It was 9-1.
And dude, he's so freaking good. Like, I mean, he's unbelievably good and an MVP candidate type of player, and just very quiet, like super quiet guy. I always hear Dallas media comment they don't really know like anything about him whatsoever. Like he's just kind of there. He shows up and like hits dingers and leaves, and that's basically what he does. But I hope he's healthy because they desperately need him.
All right, so there's that. Thank you very much for those in the chat room that continue to go at it and in different ways. And there's, I do see and I do appreciate those who have our back on things. Immaculate was asking questions. I don't know if he was getting over the edge, but I kind of see that where people get a little bit edgy, and I've been in there myself and done it too. And it just let's just everybody agree to disagree. Appreciate you guys and what you do for us, but when there are those who come in and maybe they have a different opinion, that's fine. It's something that's what the chat room's about. We appreciate everybody that jumps in there. When we come back, the 5 o'clock hour around the corner, former Baylor linebacker Taylor Young went through some tough times when he was there. Someone that, of course, Phil Bennett loved to death and recruited, and his thoughts about what he sees from what's going on at Baylor. And also around the corner, Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, and the A&M quarterback injury. But more to get to with college football. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for a variety of different things that you might be trying to get done. You might be trying to buy a new car. They can help you out there. You might be trying to buy a pre-owned car. They can help you out there. You might just need some work at the service department, like some tires. They can help you out there as well. And if you're looking for great customer service, and there's no doubt about it, that's where they will definitely be at their best. And right now there's a lot of construction going on outside of Richard Carr, but they are trying to make, because of that, the buying process for a new Buick, GMC, or Cadillac easier than you could ever imagine. Right now, qualified buyers can save over $7,000 on new 2023 GMC Sierra 1500s. You can finance for 0.9%, and they've got dozens of Sierras currently on the lot. So the inventory is there, the pricing's there, the financing's there to get you into a new GMC Sierra today. And if you're a military or first responder, you can also save an additional $500. But they've also got the trades all over the lot. They trade for the best, so they have a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks as well. The financing goal, once again, 100% credit approval. Richard Carr says yes when others say no. So check out their new and pre-owned vehicles all over the lot today. And as I mentioned at the very top, perhaps you're not in the market for a vehicle. You're just looking to get the car or truck or SUV that you're in worked on. Well, their award-winning service department is standing by to keep you on the road. They can't be beat on tires. Right now, Richard Carr offering a price match guarantee on the lowest price comparable tires in town. So service your car or truck with the people you can count on over at Richard Carr that have been in business for 24 years in the Central Texas area, and over that time has built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Run by proud Central Texans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Taylor Young, former Baylor linebacker, and he is in high school or coaching high school football up in the Dallas and Fort Worth area. And he joins us now on 365 Sports with Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. Taylor, thanks for your time. As a former player, and you had been a part of a couple of teams that struggled because of the change, the tradition, or the transition of coaching, but Baylor right now is struggling. What do you see when you have a chance to watch them?
To be honest, I see a lot of small mistakes that I believe can be fixed, but honestly, effort. It's really effort and just overall, just like the small things about just running to the ball, finishing tackles, but just on our defensive side of the ball. And just actually like they're doing their assignment to the best of their abilities. That's just all I see. I just believe it's the small things.
How much do the small things improve when you play with confidence? Because, Taylor, it just seems to me that the last year or so, they're not playing very confident.
No doubt. I mean, I see the same thing, but confidence is really everything. So I'm never playing football. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have confidence, then it's hard to play fast because you're always questioning things and you question your assignments. You question it as if I should have this type of, like if I'm spilling or if I'm boxing or if I have this route or if I have that route. So just having your confidence is everything in football, man.
Taylor, do you see some young guys that can be big-time players given another year or two? And just what's that process like of trying to get those young guys and extract the most that you can out of them? How do you try to go about, getting them that confidence earlier and ramping them up like that?
Honestly, man, just going back to step one, like really like with young guys, I think it's a mentality deal, just introducing them to what great study habits look like, introducing them what the extra work looks like, and just changing their mentality of, hey, I'm here, I've made it to I haven't done anything yet. I haven't made a name for myself yet. I need to be grinding all the time to be better. Like, I mean, football is really all about stacking days. Like just stacking days on top of each other, being better than you were the previous day. And if you could change your mentality that way, then I believe things will start slowly changing.
What are your thoughts on the ups and downs? You went through that when you were at Baylor. The ups and downs, the changes, and can you kind of feel for the team? But this is year 4 for Dave Aranda, although the COVID year kind of is one of those with an asterisk.
No doubt. It's like for me right now, it's two things that are going to happen, especially when the things feel like they're all going bad. Like first off, you got to figure out who's steering the ship. And I'm not talking about Coach Aranda or anything like that, but just as far as in the locker room, what type of leaders do you have? Like, because there's two things that can happen in that locker room. That's either you're going to fight or it's like you're going to fold. And, and like honestly, it depends on who's leading because it's easy to just give up whenever things aren't going, it's like your way. And like it's all about who's leading that team and who's going out trying to get better day in and day out and having hard physical practices. You know what I mean? And everybody just being into getting better.
Taylor Young,
it's a culture thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Taylor, you went through that year, the 1-11 year. You guys had that great game against Oklahoma. How did you feel the build, even though you weren't winning games? Did you feel the things building and gelling together after all you guys had been through?
Like that whole year was tough. You know what I mean? With just all the changes and all the different, still having talent, but it being used in a different type of way. Because our rosters were different. It was all about speed with Coach Browse and everything else. And Coach Rule, he wanted to be physical. Well, he didn't have the tools to do that at first. And so honestly, shoot, it's those small things that you just gotta. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's
you're all
right.
good, man.
Yeah. No.
Can you ask the question for me again?
Yeah. What was it like? I mean, just going back based on what you said, that year was really difficult. How did you then come through it, like with all the different things were going on?
Well, honestly, you just got to continue to fight. Continue to fight and making sure everybody's on board. And if they're not, like, address it. Just addressing it. That's really the main thing. Addressing the issues and being able to build on something and have a goal. Okay, goals might change in the season, but having a goal and say, hey, let's get better at this. Let's figure out what we're doing wrong and let's get better at these small things. And eventually you'll start building into something.
Taylor, as the losing streak continued on, and that's what they're kind of in the midst of. I mean, they're looking at 1-11 right now themselves. You mentioned leadership, you mentioned coaching the plan, but how do you look at this team and how do you think that they, stay the course even if the losses continue to pile up? I mean, because it's one thing to see the long game, but man, every week it's another loss, it's another loss. Just how did you deal with that personally, and how did y'all deal with that as a team?
Well, yeah, like I said, it's all about the leadership. And like at that time, I was the leader of that team. And my mentality personally is like, giving everything I got all the time, no matter what. And so you have to have that mentality pouring throughout the team. Okay, things are going our way. All right, our starting quarterback is hurt. But what does that have to do with you? You know what I mean? Like, that has nothing to do. Like, you can't control that. You can only control yourself and what you bring to the table. And so that's honestly something that I still take with me. And, like, I try to pour that into anybody that I'm coaching or I'm teaching. It's like, well, what are you doing personally to be the best that you can be? Because all that other stuff that's happening around you, you have no control over. And so I just keep that in mind and just try to just tell people that, and hopefully they're doing that same thing.
Devin Lemire, who was one of the few that came up and, like, hammered somebody during the game, not that there weren't other tackles, but after the game, he expressed a lot of, like, what I thought was incredibly a very sincere frustration. And one of the things he brought up, Taylor, was the lack of players being accountable or within the locker room. So people can discuss the coaching staff, they can put players in position, they can deal with injuries, etc. But what happens when you don't have, or it appears as if there's a frustration on players, like, basically being accountable themselves?
You know, like that comes from leadership. Like, that comes from, like, addressing it head on, addressing the situations head on, addressing your teammates head on, and calling those guys out, and understanding what's our way, and do your personal habits align with our way, or are you going against us? And, like, that's pretty much the main thing, is, like, you got to figure out where's the ship being steered to. Now, are you helping out this ship, or are you constantly putting holes in it when anybody isn't looking? Like, nobody's looking. And so you got to figure that out. And so, honestly, like, the best way to do it is just address it head on. And so sometimes that's uncomfortable in a locker room, but at the end of it all, you come out more healthy.
Taylor, we kind of brought up the Oklahoma game in passing. I heard you chuckle a little bit. We've actually got a poster here at the studio of your hit on Baker Mayfield. Yep. And, I'm just curious, how often does that still get brought up, or do you end up seeing that picture? And is that, would you say, of, like, you made so many plays, you were a part of so many great teams, but is that, like, at the top of the pile of like, encapsulate Taylor Young's career, and it would be a picture of that hit on Baker Mayfield?
I mean, no doubt. Only in the reason why it is because I'm not going to take, like, because he was a great player, right. You know, and, like, and that was something that I want to put out there. He was a great competitor and a hard-nosed type of guy. So I want to put that out there, but no doubt about it. It's one of my most memorable moments, especially with a tough season, especially if you're going through a tough season like we did. So I feel like it's just the epitome of who I am. Okay, well, we're 0-4, we're 0-3, or whatnot. And just continue to play with everything that I have. So, no doubt about it.
Taylor, that was, I mean, you can show that video as, like, the perfect, like, way to hit a quarterback and not get caught. I mean, like, you know, no penalty. It was like, just straight through perfect tackle.
Yep. Yep. It didn't feel like anything, which is the perfect hit.
So so when you hit it, you just felt like you were going straight through.
Straight through a thin piece of paper.
That picture, which is frozen in time, you see the cleats that are shredded on the field in the air. You see like tape on every parts of your body. It is a violent and yet clean hit. Did Baker Mayfield say anything to you after that hit?
Not after that hit. No, it was one. I want to say the drive before that I gave it to him. That was real bad, and you know, and it knocked the air out of him for a little bit. But I can tell you, just the competitor who he is, man, he hopped right back up and act like nothing happened, and kept going. Yeah. So honestly, like that's who he is. So hey.
Yeah, and it's proven out. He's still, hanging around. Saw him on Monday Night Football just a couple of days back, and he's still doing his thing and still being a fighter out there. So Taylor, they're not going to play Oklahoma this year. They just played Texas for the final time. As a guy who played in the Big 12, what are your thoughts on not seeing a Baylor team line up against an OU or a Texas and just kind of all the changes? What do you make of that as a former player?
Man, those games were important, and just getting up getting ready to play those games, like it meant a lot because you knew a lot of people were going to look or were going to check that game out. So, those are really important as a player. I feel like not having them in the conference, man, it's going to be a sad day, but just all the new type of talent, it's like this coming through, I believe it'll be okay. So, with just guys like Utah, Houston and stuff like that, like those are guys, like they're not as big, but it's still big names and it's something that's different. So,
what is it like to be a player and the coaching staff is taking heat?
Man, it just depends on what type of player you are, it's names that aren't there anymore, but because Casada, it's one thing he talked about was just control what you can control. You know what I mean? Like, but because they're taking heat, they're taking heat because we're not winning. It's like they're taking heat because some people aren't doing their job, So just control what you can control and try your best not to think about it and just dive into your craft. That's one of the, man, you got to dive into your craft when all this outside stuff is happening. You have no control over it. So it's tough. No doubt it's tough because people are talking about you on campus.
Mm-hmm.
Fans aren't being fans, like they're honestly talking about how bad you look or, what needs to change. And honestly, none of that matters to you personally as a player. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to keep getting better. Or you can let it affect you and now you're stressing about things that you really have no control over. So it just depends.
Taylor Young, former Baylor linebacker, with us on 365 Sports. Had you ever been during that time when everything was just not working well in 16? Did you ever have to kind of like calm another player down that might have been barking a little bit too much? Did you ever have those kind of moments without, and you don't have to mention the players, but because we all, three of us, remember. We weren't in the locker room, but we remember that was tough times.
No doubt. Especially 2016 when I believe the head coach is Grove. Yeah. That was just with all the outside noise. It was definitely hard. It was definitely hard to hear, especially with people who were younger, who didn't have nothing to do with the stuff that was going on, which a lot of us didn't. But I'm like we had some personalities on the team that needed to be checked. And we had to figure out what was going on. And it was a lot for everybody, players and coaches, And so the main thing is supposed to be football. It became something else. So, as coaches, it's up to us as coaches to keep football the main thing at all times, no matter what's happening outside. And so, that was just something that I believe that we lacked. But we did try to check it at the end. I believe we came together at the end.
Yeah.
Kept on playing hard, so.
Won the bowl game and against Boise State. Can you reflect back, and there was so much turmoil because of the change and also the publicity, the negativeness of what was going on with people, everything. I mean, you as a Baylor football player, no matter what kind of a great young man you were a demon. You were bad because you were on the team that had so much attention. Can you kind of reflect back after the Texas game? I know there was a lot of controversy before that game, and it was a very tough ending. Did everything, in your opinion, did it just fall apart after that?
Well, I can say this, man, that I remember like it was yesterday because, that was something that was big happening. But it fell apart pre-Texas game, like the night before. So whenever that big article came out was when I believe things started falling apart. I don't know all the factuals about that, so I'm not going to speak on it like on radio. But it was a lot of misinformation that was put out there in that. But whenever that came out, I believe football was no longer the main thing, and that's really what I could say to what really happened with the season after that.
We have Phil Bennett on every Monday, and we know
And you just explained it perfectly. By the way,
Yeah.
you didn't say a lot, but you didn't need to. Like that made all the sense in the world. We got you there.
He obviously tried to keep that thing together too. Coach Grove did everything he could. Give us something about Phil Bennett, who loved you to death, recruited you. You had to go through the recruitment, always not large enough, tall enough, whatever. He loved you. He also knew Dat Wynn, among others. We'll run something with him on Monday the next time he joins us. Give us your just overall view of what you think of Phil Bennett.
Well, I worked with him too as well in North Texas.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I want to say he's an amazing boss. He's an amazing boss. But man, he's hard nosed and he's a truth teller. That's what I like to tell. That's what I like to say. He's a truth teller, and he's gonna say whatever he thinks he needs to tell you to get you to play at your highest level. And as a young guy, just being criticized and stuff like that, like it can shut you down. But what he's trying to build you into, like that criticism right there, should honestly make you go harder. And so whenever you finally shed that skin, like that soft skin that you had, and you become somewhat of a man, like you'll start taking that criticism and knowing that I need to go harder. And so, man, Coach Bennett, like he molded a lot of young men throughout time, coaching probably 40 plus years, like just molding guys into becoming who they are and becoming confident young men. And I can just appreciate like that. That's a guy who, like, if I get married, I'm gonna make sure he's at my wedding. He took a chance on me when nobody did. Nobody. Even though, I was All-American 5A Player of the Year in high school, So he wasn't just taking just a chance. I'm just saying.
Right.
I was just short.
There's truth serum. What you just said is exactly what you're right. You were an incredible player and at DeSoto High School. Did all of those years at Baylor, how did that, through the thick and the thin, through the high, the exhilarating, and also the worst of times, how did that mold you?
Man, I said this a lot just playing wise because my dad always mentioned it just growing up. But adversity causes some to break and some to break records. And I feel like I'm still living life and I'm going through life like I'm ready to break records. And I've been through a lot of adversity. And, those are just things that has happened. Those are things that are going to happen in life. You just got to keep pushing through, especially if you think you're trying to be great. Like if you're trying to be great, you can't let those small hurdles get in the way of your true greatness, I guess. But yeah, just throughout all that, man, just keep hopping hurdles and keep going forward and putting the right foot down and putting your left foot down after that. Just keep moving.
Taylor, I have to ask you this. This is like separate from a lot of stuff we've been talking about, but how much did uniforms matter to you players? Like, how excited did you get for, hey, we're wearing the all black or we're wearing the chrome gold? Because there's a lot of debate. Fans wanted a blackout last week. They don't have black uniforms, this and that. But, did that matter to you or to other players? Or is that something that genuinely, got you guys jacked up and ready to play at an even higher level?
Man, well, that all black is that's something different. You mean business whenever you put that all black on. But just no doubt, I remember playing ball and having them gold chrome helmets, which we were probably one of the first teams to have. Just saying, but for putting those gold helmets on, they definitely did something to us, like having that uniform. But the all gold and the all green and the all white was cool with Coach Rule because Coach Rule was a hard-nosed, physical type. Everything about him was that. And I feel like that was okay. But this roster here seems to be a little bit more flashy, a little bit, with a little bit more speed guys and not necessarily just pound. I wouldn't mind seeing something different. And I know the players would too, and the recruits would as well.
Taylor, I know that there was a little Twitter back and forth with some former teammates about making a comment about Matt Rule at Nebraska compared to what it was like for Kedrick, and I know you guys love each other, about the time, about how he basically, it appeared as if he was trying to say that he broke you guys. But you came back pretty quickly along with a couple of others. Did you talk to Kedrick, and what really – how you could explain what he was trying to say, and in return, your response?
No doubt. know that I can tell it was some truth in that statement that he had there. So I'm not going to totally discredit it. But like what I am going to say is that a lot of that stuff did happen. A lot of guys did have concussions and whatnot, but a lot of that stuff happened to guys that didn't really want to play ball for Coach Rule as well, but or didn't really go with the value with what Coach Rule was trying to do. So some of those guys are my friends. Like I can say that Vakedrick is my friend, and Vakedrick thrived in that atmosphere, and he loved Coach Rule. Like that was one thing about it. A lot of that stuff, like you coming from a roster that was built off speed, built off running tempo offense, and then trying to switch it within a year of trying to be a pound type of offensive team or really a good defensive whole run, like the defensive being the main priority, practices change. You start being a little bit more physical. You start having periods that's 9-on-7 for more than 10 minutes. You start changing the mentality of your linebackers instead of two-gapping things where we're going to run through somebody's neck. That type of stuff, like those guys talked about it. But they also equipped us with the different things that you can do to make sure that you don't go through those things. Like they wanted us to lift extra weights. They wanted us to do like they put neck exercises into our lifting program. Like they gave us the tools to get better. And as you can see, 3 years down the line, it worked. There's like 12 of those guys. Of course, they end up graduating with Aranda, but it's like 12 of those guys, 10 to 12 that's still in the league or floating around somewhere. So, like the chef worked, like his stuff works. And the guys that didn't really like it, I hate to say it, and I don't want to sound like I'm being a hard ass or whatnot. I'm sorry, excuse me.
That's okay.
Hard or what? But they were soft. A lot of that stuff they didn't really want to deal with the day in and the day out of being physical. I had to get over it because that wasn't something I was used to. So, like when Browse was there, we never took each other to the ground. So, it's just stuff that you got to get used to and adapt.
Yeah, different coaching staff, different philosophies. One won a lot, and then one was able to turn around a disastrous year through a tough time and won too.
No doubt.
Taylor, you're with Richardson ISD. Are you coaching at an intermediate school, or are you at a high school? Where are you right now?
I'm at Richardson High. I'm the special teams coordinator here. We just got a new head coach here, Coach Holloway, which he came from Richardson Berkman. He was the offensive coordinator there last year. So we're honestly just building a program up that has been down for a long time. And like when we're enjoying it, we're 3-2 right now. Last year, like we went 3-7. So it's a big deal for us just to be out here trying to change the culture.
Use the example and the experience you have of being a part of that turnaround when you were at Baylor. People in the chat saying that they have learned quite a bit. Very interesting. A lot of what we discussed and your truth serum from what you learned from Phil Bennett. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time, and we hope to see you soon.
No doubt. All right, now thank you.
Taylor Young, Richardson High School, now a special teams coach. And that was another thing that when Rule took over, some of their best players were on special teams. John Lovett, among others. That was just something that he demanded, kind of that NFL style of when you're a rookie, you got to make the team, not with your talent, but also with your ability to make plays on special teams.
Yeah, he's an all-timer for that program. I mean, without a doubt, you're putting together your all-time, Bears team. He's got to have a place on there somewhere. And I'm glad that I thought of I was like, what could I ask him that he hadn't touched on? I'm glad I asked him about the uniforms. That was like an interesting answer. I felt like with Rule took over. It's like, hey, we're gonna be like a Big Ten team basically. It doesn't matter that the uniforms are super gold or whatever. But yeah, I think there's like a little bit of a different flavor here. But there's a lot of good stuff to unpack from that with Taylor. It's been a long time since we talked to him. We got a big old poster in here of him sacking Baker Mayfield from that game, and he discussed that at length, which was cool. And I have a lot of respect for that young guy, and he's not a young guy really anymore, but you know what I mean. He's much younger than me, and I just have a lot of respect for the way he carried himself and really led in so many ways during about as abysmal of a time as you could possibly have. And I'm just glad that by the end of it, he didn't necessarily get to be a part of what would happen, like a Big 12 title after the fact or anything. He got that when he was in his younger part of his career.
Yep.
But if not for him, that other stuff doesn't happen afterwards. No. And he can always know that I absolutely had I was one of the pillars of what would be to come with Matt Rule and Dave Aranda eventually as well, without a doubt.
Redshirted his first. Go ahead.
He's also got such a coach voice now, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, he does.
He's got a coach voice. Yeah.
Was part of the Big 12 championship teams. 13 he redshirted, 14 he played, 15 of course they were really, really good and just fell a little bit short. And then part of that transitional year in 16, which was up and down, loved his truth about the inside of what after the game or before the game they played Texas, that Wall Street Journal report came out, and it was just about everything but football or more about not football. And then in 17, 1-11, they were terrible. But I remember when he made the decision to come back and how he helped, even with 1-11, the next year, the transition, because of he helped kind of keep that thing together and try. And as you could tell, he loved that type of football too. Loved both Coach Briles, Coach Grove, the interim, and then also with Matt Rule.
And he's right. I mean, the way he said it, phrased it, it just became about it came about something different than football. And he's absolutely right. And that's how it felt at the time. It was hard to put your finger on exactly what was just. It was just a lot, man. It was a lot. And like he said, that was the best way to describe it. It just became about something other than football, and it was no surprise to see them kind of start to skid after that. But, yeah, he played obviously a couple years after that and definitely left his mark in a positive way.
That whole season, you could feel the team they were really good, they were really talented, but you knew that they were standing on the edge of a cliff.
Oh, yeah.
And the minute that it even got shaky, they were not going to be able to hold it up.
That was a dam burst moment.
Yeah, exactly. So they were there, and the only thing you could hope, the only thing that you could hope was that you could push that moment off until as late in the season as you could, and then. But that was unrealistic. The fact that they got through 6 games and it hadn't happened, honestly, is a miracle.
They were 6-0 about to play Texas, and then the story came out. Wall Street Journal. It was. It was destructive, and you heard Taylor tell it the way he told it. By the way, to Chris Bailey, Utah fan, came to Waco for the game, said he was impressed with the program, thought he would be, hammered by Baylor fans while wearing red, but very nice. Great to have you, Chris. Very impressed with Kyle Whittingham, always, and especially 4-0 without their starting quarterback in Cam Rising.
Yeah, they're an incredible addition to the Big 12. I know it's not what everybody necessarily wanted, whether Utah fans or BYU fans or, others just have their preferences of the way they like it. I'm ecstatic. I think Utah fans traveled really well. Hopefully they had a good time. And there will be a return trip, I think, for Baylor fans to go to your place next year. And then, however it ping-pongs back and forth because it's not a playing every year thing anymore, right? But I think that everybody's going to enjoy the back and forth with Utah, and not just Baylor, but all the Big 12 teams, because it's an awesome program, and Kyle Whittingham does an excellent job. And as soon as they enter, they're going to be right there at the top of the conversation, day one of best programs and best head coach and all that jazz. And, yeah, fired up that the Big 12 was able to pull off, getting them in, because I do think – for all the talk about, well, it's not this or it's not that, I think that because you have a Utah now, we'll see with Colorado and Dion what that turns into and how long he's there and established. But for Utah, what you're getting day one, and that's going to be a huge bonus addition for the Big 12.
That's the personality of that football team. I could play for Kyle Whittingham and love it. You have the one note from Gabe Eichert, Sirius XM, the Big 12 radio network. We asked Coach Kleiman on Sirius XM College Big 12 Radio about his name being mentioned for the Michigan State opening. His response, I'll be sticking in Manhattan. I will not be a candidate for that job.
Look,
but he didn't say, somebody somewhere, he didn't say.
Hey, he has a fantastic AD in Gene Taylor. He's got an administration that is backing the athletics really well. Jerome Tang just got a long extension. That's a good place to be for Chris Kleiman. Michigan State is going to have to navigate through. There could be candidates that really want that job, but you're not leaving a good job for that one right now necessarily, unless there's a lot of other things, because Mel Tucker did what he did, but Michigan State had problems before Mel Tucker got there that they clearly have not solved.
Yeah.
So until they solve those, I don't think they're going to be able, even with their deep pockets and the money they're going to save from Mel Tucker potentially, should they be able to maintain firing him for cause, which at this point, I don't see why they shouldn't. Right. But that's not something that I think that you're going to be able to call and be like, hey, you want to come to Michigan State? And you'd be like, I like it. Like Lance Leipold, like, I kind of like it here. There's not chaos. So unless you really want to go in and be a fixer, I don't know.
I mean, that's going to be an attractive job because of the Big Ten money and just the safety and security of, being in that conference and knowing what's coming your way financially. But, it is a crowded room and it is a different style, and it's a different thing than what you're living in the Big 12 right now, where you've got it pretty good. And, unless you're just financially driven, I don't see why you'd pick up and go to Michigan State. I think you can do as much damage at Kansas State as you can at Michigan State. Money be damned. So, unless that's just a goal, which for some people, hey, like I get, you get that money part of it, but he doesn't strike me as that type of guy, especially at this stage of his career in general. And so I'm not surprised at all to see that. I believe him. I think it's great for Kansas State that he's already come out and said that and was asked about that. By the way, did y'all see Tang banging the drum at the Chiefs game the other day?
Jerome Tang, yeah.
Yeah. But
he's so fun.
Yeah, that was cool to see that. And we're huge fans of his, obviously. But, yeah, I also am a fan of Chris Kleiman's, and I think he's done a tremendous job. Obviously, they've won a Big 12 title and short amount of time, but that's great to see for the league, and hopefully that sticks that way for a long time.
All right, when we come back, Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, his thoughts about the Wigman injury being longer than they thought. He's out for the year. Max Johnson now, who took over on Saturday, will now be the man down the stretch and hopefully be able to keep him healthy. That and other stories. Sam Kahn, next on 365 Sports.
Everybody probably at some point has to battle the weight issue. You get a little lazy, you start to eat too much, and you're not working out. Your metabolism is not good. And so you look for a way, the easy way, to be able to continue to be undisciplined with your diet or what you do with exercise. And there are options. There is one way that works every time, because it's methodically taking care of working out, losing weight, along with inches, and that feeling of when you put a pair of pants on and all of a sudden they're a little more loose. That's a great feeling. You just feel better. Walk through the front door at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness. Ask for help. The personal trainers from Christy London to Randall Corley to Nathan Roach. And then on top of that, they have all the equipment you could imagine, from weights to machines, classes galore every single day. But you have to walk through the front door. They will help you once you do. The best way, the most methodical way, and the best way to not just lose inches and weight, but also sustain the success of all the hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs. Knowing you, that's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide. Affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Cars priced right, both day and night. At Richard Car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. At Richard Car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. At Richard Car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. At Richard Car in Waco, Texas.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now, here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. Wrapping up this 5 o'clock hour in today's show. We're back at it again tomorrow at 3. Paul's triple option also at 1. He'll be in Orlando, Florida for the weekend of UCF hosting Baylor. Joined by Sam Kahn, theathletic.com. And Sam, thank you for your time. And, man, it's kind of A&M in their quarterback room. They have a young, talented young man in Wigman is playing well, and then all of a sudden he's out. Now he's out longer. How much of a blow is this for the Aggies?
Yeah, it's a significant blow just because the ceiling on Connor Wegman and the ceiling for this A&M offense you feel like was really high as long as he's in the lineup. They haven't been perfect by any means this year. Certainly the Miami game was evidence of that. They had some difficulties picking up pressures and keeping him protected, but he's really the centerpiece that makes this thing go. He's mobile. He's got tremendous arm talent. He's super confident. He's got a really good understanding of the offense and what they're trying to do, distributes the ball well. He's a young quarterback, so he's only in his 9th start, so he wasn't perfect. There's times where he misses reads and misses throws, and you saw some of that in the first half against Auburn. But this was a guy who was really, I feel like, on track to be a future star in this league. And now you get his career, his season disrupted. He's probably going to be out for the year with this lower leg injury that he's got. The foot injury is what it is. And it just disrupts A&M season. Now, I don't think the bottom should fall out because I think Max Johnson is a capable guy. He started 12 games at LSU in 2021. He's got 17 starts to his credit. He started 3 games at A&M last year. I think there's plenty of reason for A&M to still think it can be competitive. I just think without Wegman and some of the special traits that he has, you lose a little bit of the ceiling that you may have had with him in the lineup.
Sam, is this kind of a weird spot for now Jimbo Fisher to be put in? It's already tense because they're paying him a lot of money and they haven't gotten there yet. But here the SEC West is as open as it's been, and they have an opportunity, and now they got to put it on Max Johnson's shoulders to get him there.
Yeah, that's what makes this fascinating because, like I said, on one hand, with Connor Wegman, if things were to go right with the SEC West looking the way it is, could you envision a scenario where A&M would win the SEC West? I don't think it's out of the question. I certainly, after the Miami loss, I wouldn't pick them to do it because there were still some flaws there, and the first half of Auburn didn't really inspire a lot of confidence. But you still could see, when you look at the sheer talent on the roster, defense and offense, you felt like, hey, it wouldn't be completely nonsensical for them to win the division. this year, as vulnerable as it is. I think LSU is still a favorite at this point, but I think anything could happen. With Johnson, I think the ceiling's just a little bit lower, and I think it's harder to ask them to win the division this year. But I still think this is a team that should win at least 8 games, if not 9. When I saw the talent that they had and just seeing them up close and personal, I was at the Auburn game, and they overwhelmed Auburn offensively. Like the defense, I mean, their defensive front really overwhelmed Auburn's offense. And Auburn's got its own issues, but I don't remember seeing A&M having a talent advantage over an SEC West team quite to that degree, or certainly one of the SEC West teams that recruits at a similar level, which Auburn is supposed to. I don't think they did in the Harsin era. But to me, I look at that team in terms of talent and thought to myself, before Wegman got hurt, I turned to somebody who was sitting next to me in the press box and I said, there's no reason this team shouldn't win 9 or 10 games when you look how much talent they got. They really shouldn't. But it's not just talent. It's coaching. It's all this other stuff that factors into it. And this injury, I think, to Wegman certainly affects that. And so what does it do to Jimbo? I don't know. I think it's less about Connor Wegman, and it's more about how do you play. Are you being successful on offense? Are you moving the ball on offense? Are you winning games? Are you competitive in games? Or are you seeing a lot of the same mistakes that we saw last year? Are you seeing some of the offensive ineptitude that we saw last year? I think it's going to be less a win-loss record and more of a you'll know it when you see it based on what you see on the field kind of thing.
Sam, what are your thoughts on this Arkansas matchup? Obviously, they've taken their own lumps already. I mean, BYU went up to Fayetteville and got them a couple of weeks back, but this has been a crazy rivalry between these two teams. There's been some funky games, but what are your expectations rolling around for this one?
Yeah, I guess you would have to expect that it's going to still be really competitive just because that's the way this series has gone. I feel like very few of these games when it's been, even when one of the teams has not been great, usually when it's been Arkansas, even the years that Arkansas struggled, these games have been super competitive. Very few of them have been decided by large margins. And it just always has a way of ending weird. Last year you had the fumble return, I think, where they had this, A&M had the strip and then they pitched it to Monty Richardson, who returned it. And then you had the doink off the top of the goalpost on Arkansas's potential go-ahead field goal late in the game that missed. This is an Arkansas team, obviously, that is not in a great shape either after that BYU loss. And again, I go back to the talent advantage, and I feel like if A&M, even without Wegman, still should be the favorite in this game. And this is a game that if you're A&M, you need to go in there and win this game. And I don't really see any reason why they shouldn't. Max Johnson started this game last year, and the offense looked horrid for the first two quarters in that game, but they still found a way to grind it out. I think this team is better than it was a year ago from a talent standpoint. I think they're going to be better defensively so far. And I think offensively, what I've seen so far in the Petrino era suggests to me that they should at least be able to put some points on the board against Arkansas.
What did you think about Devin Achane and his performance in the NFL with Miami?
Yeah, I certainly didn't expect him to have 4 touchdowns this early in his career, but it doesn't shock me to be successful. He had all the speed, all the ability that you want in a running back, to run between the tackles, to break tackles, and make yards after contact, is an asset in the receiving game as well. That's something I think A&M could have used him more as when he was there. But you love seeing the guys like that succeed, seeing him succeed, seeing Bijan Robinson, the Texas product, succeed at Atlanta. I feel like when we cover colleges, you almost feel like these are like your kids. You cover them, you get to know them for a little while, and you root for them when they move on, and you're really proud of them when they go on to do great things. And I'm not shocked to see Devon Achane having success.
All right, Sam, who out of Houston, Texas Tech, and Baylor wins the Tums Award for most upsetting season so far?
Woo, man. I think it's got, as much as I want to say Houston, I think it has to be Baylor, because there has not been a single performance that Baylor has put on the board yet that would inspire confidence if I'm a Baylor. Even the game against Long Island, that it was a little disjointed, throughout that game too. And they didn't pound them the way you would expect a Power 5 team to pound an FCS team. And then just the lack of juice that you see from that team, losing obviously the way they did Texas State. They were much more competitive against Utah, but some killer mistakes that ended that one. And I said it last week wrote about it last week before the Texas game that if Baylor didn't start quick, that thing could get ugly in a hurry against Texas, and it did. It was not pretty. You really don't know where to look for optimism, I think, at this point if you're a Baylor fan, because the schedule doesn't get a ton easier. I mean, UCF obviously has got a lot of talent. Texas Tech, even though they're 1-3, they've been competitive in all those games, and they have a lot of speed and talent on that roster. Certainly there's a chance you look at this swing, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Houston, maybe there's a chance to pick up some momentum, but that finishing stretch in November is going to be tough in those last 3 weeks. So I think Baylor's probably the team that I feel worst about if you're one of those groups. Houston certainly hasn't been great, but you at least have 2 wins on the board. The ugly win to start against UTSA, and then you dominate Sam Houston, which is something you should do. And then Texas Tech obviously is a huge disappointment just because there was so much hype and buildup, and Joey McGuire and that staff, they welcomed it. They talked about it. They talked the talk in this offseason. But, boy, they haven't walked the walk in these first 4 games, and they have lost, obviously, 3 close games, but making some mistakes that you really can't make if you're a good football team and if you're a championship contending football team.
Sam, are you all in on the Longhorns?
I am, yeah. I still want to see some improvement offensively early in games. It's funny because in the first 2 years, this was a team that started quick and then faded down the stretch. Yep. Now it feels like a team that's starting slow and finishing strong. Can they put those 2 things together? If you can, then you've got a real juggernaut. But the reason I'm optimistic is this. The defensive line and that run defense that they have, boy, that has been pretty consistent week in and week out. And that is something that I think the depth that they've built there, the talent they have in the front 7, I think is really going to help carry them through this year. And while the offense figures it out, and they have so much talent on offense, from Quinn Ewers to Xavier Worthy to A.D. Mitchell to J.T. Sanders to Jonathan Brooks, and even more beyond that. To me, all the pieces are there. They're getting it together. I think this week against Kansas is going to be really important. I want to see how they play in that game. How do they approach that game? Are they able to start a little quicker? Certainly the rivalry game against Oklahoma is huge, but other than that, I don't see any reason to back off my expectation that they won at least 10 and went to the conference championship game. I think there's even more reason to feel confident they can do that right now.
Sam, we appreciate you as always. Great stuff. Thanks for your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Y'all take care.
Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, with many things on the A&M quarterback, the injury, the update that Connor Wigman is out now, not just for maybe 4 to 6 weeks or whatever. He's out for the year with that injury being worse than they thought after new reports and also a few more, I guess you could say, checkups on him. And then on a lot of things as far as the Big 12, the disappointment. It's a great question on who has been the most disappointing. Baylor and Tech play not this weekend, but next, and Lord knows what that will be like based on what happens this weekend.
Yeah, I do think it's just strange. I mean, it's bad luck for A&M. One of them is bad luck, but, you finally, and it's everything in the SEC West, but you plan and you plan and you plan. You hope you have everything in the, loaded in the barrel for when Alabama shows 1 ounce of vulnerability. And then when you do, you're all like everybody else is going through the exact same thing in the whole SEC West. So the moment you think like, okay, boom, it's kind of like what everybody else has done. Now that Texas is, back on the national scene.
Oh, God, you just said Texas is back.
On the national scene.
You're right.
But has returned to the national scene. Everybody had a chance to step on their neck in the Big 12 for years and years and years and never really did it. A&M had a chance. Never really did it. And now here they are going to the SEC, maybe even loaded for bear. Might be one of the better teams
with
rolling
more
into that
momentum than they have, legitimate momentum and real momentum, and what appears to be like deep momentum than they had at any year in the last 10 or 12.
Yeah, and it's almost impossible to keep a team like that down because of just the resources.
Yep.
That no matter how bad you are, you're never going to be a smaller school with less money. So you're still Texas at the end of the day. And so that always helps out tremendously as opposed to others. But, yeah, I mean, they took their licks there for a while. KU, obviously the timing of that game this week, that's one that, like, maybe that would trip you up, but I feel like they're going to be laser focused on the Jayhawks because of all the jokes they've heard for the last, several years now at this point. But yeah, Texas appears to be the real deal. And, I think he hit on all the other subjects. The only thing I was going to also ask, but was just about Texas State, because I know he checked them out last weekend, and they're off to obviously a really good start there at 3-1 with G.J. Kinney, and it seems like a name we're going to be hearing a lot more of as far as just rising coaches, and whenever the carousel pops up, especially for jobs around here, I think that he's somebody who's ascending very fast. But, the better they do, at least it makes that week 1 for Baylor, I guess, look a little better. But still, that's the one that set them really behind the A-ball this entire season right out of the gate. So, yeah, always like talking to Sam and just kind of going around the wheel of Texas stuff. But I did think him talking about Jimbo and how they play will determine – really how people feel at the end of the year, as opposed to, Connor Wigman's hurt. That gives them an excuse. No, it doesn't. You got Max Johnson there. So how they play will be as important as anything else when it comes to the future of Jimbo Fisher in College Station.
Appreciate his time. Brett McMurphy, Sam Conn, Ricky Thompson, and Taylor Young. All of it in different ways, different perspective, a lot of different stories. And Garrett Ross, Levi Emery, Jack McKenzie. By the way, the weekly segment I have with Midway football coach Shane Anderson is now up on the reel under the Texas High School Football channel. When we come back, Paul Catalina's Top 5. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, and used to be. And what that means is as you get older, 1 out of 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. It happens. The body, it's part of father time. And if you're not one of those, everything's fine, great, good for you. You won the lottery. But if you didn't and your sex drive is not the same, you're not sleeping the same, your energy, your focus is not the same, it could be low testosterone. Dr. Kent Petty will set you up. His staff will set you up to get your blood work. They will take care of that. You give your blood, they look at the results, and if your testosterone levels are too low, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone levels so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be at PettyClinicLowT.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 thoughts on the CFP meetings. Number 5. When will this get easy? Like, at what point? And this is me kind of complaining here, but when will it get easy to figure out the college football, or easier to figure out the college football postseason? I know that, basketball probably wasn't easy to figure out as it was, but they're, at one point they were just 4, and then they said, well, why don't we do more than that? And they just kind of added, and they doubled up as they went along until they got to a point that was sustainable, and now they keep trying to add. And the push in basketball is to not add more, while the push in football is to add more. And I don't understand why the people who are making both of those same decisions, athletic directors and presidents, it's not like there's a basketball AD and president and a football AD and president, seem to just not apply the same logic to either of them. And I know it's complex, but it should be way easier than it is, in my mind.
Yeah, it gets very confusing with the 6'6", 5'7", and all that kind of stuff. But, I'll go back to something, and I don't know if I said it exactly this way a day or two ago, but, college football in particular, and college basketball, you can see some of the writing on the wall, but college football is really trying to turn into the pros, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know about the NHL off the top of my head, and I just was thinking about this, so I haven't looked at it either, but every single postseason has expanded. Am I wrong? No. The last few years, every single one of them has expanded, except for, I don't know about the NHL for sure. But baseball has opened it up further. Football's added teams. Basketball, they're trying to do everything under the sun, midseason tournaments and freaking, play-in games and all this jazz. And college football's like 4. And to get 4 was like pulling teeth for decades. And so, I don't know. Like, I got where you were kind of special and to yourself there for a long time, and people appreciated that. But, like, you're either in or you're out. You know what I mean? And so I think if you're trying to go that direction of the pro style and all that, like, I don't know. I think expansion should be an easy thing, and I don't think it should be such a fight necessarily. But I know there's bigger powers in play than it being those leagues are all under the same umbrella, and that's the difference. And I get that that's the difference, but it's just funny that, like, less exclusive or, less entries, and it's everybody else is more playoff teams, and it's just kind of funny.
It was an act of Congress, by the way. Ross Dellinger, I want you to listen to what he said here.
I'm glad you're bringing this up because I had this right in front of me because we didn't say this earlier.
This drives me crazy because to me this is a waste of money and time and a joyride for the weekend. College football commissioner meetings are over. Notre Dame's Jack Swarbrick, their AD, says college football format change was not discussed at the 2-day meeting despite a couple of commissioners expecting it to happen. Then why were you meeting?
Why were there articles about it, as far as them discussing it, too?
I know that they have to do TV stuff and all that, but, come on.
This, to me, has turned into the way of, the NIL government hearings of just, hey, pay attention to us, and something might happen, pay attention, and then at the end of the day, it's like, oh, they didn't even meet over that. It's like, what the?
Yeah. What we should call is Gino Toretta.
Sure, somebody will talk about that,
That felt like somebody going, I'm in Congress. I should get to meet somebody that's awesome. Let me get Heisman Trophy winner Gino Toretta. I always wanted to meet that guy. Let's get him up here to talk about that. Number 4, this is still just a 2-year deal. So what makes me nervous is that all this is going on, and I think it'll stay at 12. I'm not worried about it. You're not going to give the fans a 12-team playoff and be like, oh, that was a mistake. We got to go back to 4. But this is still just a 2-year deal. So it makes me nervous that they're not going, they're going to lose. The devil's in the details. They're going to lose some of that, and this is just not going to be as smooth as it should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would like to just know what the freaking playoffs are going to look like.
Yeah.
I think I'm like everybody. It's kind of like with the realignment after a while. You're like, I don't even care at this point. Just tell me what I'm watching and tell me what I'm going to be watching. That's kind of how I feel about that. But, yeah, this is a lot of talk for something that's going to only be around for a very short amount of time before they talk about it some more and aim to, change it to whatever else after a couple years. So yeah, this is not like, hey, here's your next 20 years of the playoff. This is, here's what we do for a couple years, and then we're going to do this all over again. So yeah, it's like I said, it's almost like the NIL government stuff where it's like, just alert us when something substantial actually happens rather than all of your little conventions where you get together to have drinks.
All those board meetings among Pac-12 schools.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Number 3, the P4 probably wants the 5-7 model. Like, I don't like, they're going to talk around it right now. But if you take Greg Sankey, Brett Yormark, the Big Ten guy whose name escapes me, Petiti, and Jim Phillips, and put them in a room and said, all right, cards on the table. Are we going to take away one of these AQs for the other ones? They're all going to go, of course we are. Of course we are.
I would think so.
Yeah. So knowing that, and let me go right into number 2 then. Number 2, G5 teams need to be careful because if they don't make the right deal, they're going to get screwed in the long term on this. They have to especially with the Pac-2 situation, all that going on, they don't need to sacrifice 2 years for something that could screw them over for a decade or more.
Yeah, because it's taken long enough to get to this point, and they need to get it right, but they don't have as much leverage, and yet they still do because they have a vote. Mm-hmm. And so be smart with it.
Yeah.
Didn't Oresco come out yesterday, or did he clarify later on, I think?
Yeah, he did. I think everyone thought the 5-7 was what he meant for immediate, like in 2024 when it expands. And what he said, no, he was discussing the 5-7 for 2026. He's fighting for 6-6 for the next couple of years, which is not a given.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it would be weird that he ever would back off for 6-6.
Why
given who he
back off
was,
in 2026?
That's what it doesn't make sense to me. Just ride it out all the way to 6-6, and I don't know, but they do need to be careful because there could be. You don't want to give. That's why I'm so fascinated. Like, I want to know all the details about the writer's strike because it's one of the few times in like American history where like the money has failed really hard on that. And so but if you give the power any kind of opening, they're going to get you. The NFL Players Association gets caught up on certain things, and then they'll realize once they've ratified the deal, they're like, oh, crap. We forgot about this because they drilled down on one issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is the most power they're ever going to have is right now, and they're only going to have less and less moving forward, you would think. So, yeah, I think that they have to be mindful, those particular schools, of take advantage of what you have right now because somebody's ready, willing, and able to rip that away from you in no time, and just be very careful about your decision-making because what could fit right now doesn't necessarily fit what you need to have 5 years from now. So I think that they have to really play an interesting game of this is not just a short-term game. This is a long-term game very much as well. So, yeah, I would imagine they're smart enough to figure that out. But then again, we've given the benefit of the doubt to a lot of school officials before, only to find out they're not that much smarter, if at all, than everybody else talking about
they
it.
Just
so
have titles.
You think it'd be obvious, but, yeah, I think this is a long-term discussion for the G5 schools for sure.
And number 1, nothing can happen until there's PAC clarity. So until whatever happens with the PAC happens, nothing's going to happen. So whatever they figured out with those remaining 2 and what's going to happen.
God almighty, we're waiting on the Pac-12 or 2 or whatever it is to make a decision.
And look, the 2 that we want or that are in control, they know they want to make it. They've already made the decision. Yeah. They're just waiting for the courts to tell them, here's what you can do.
Yeah. All right, Paul.
Yeah, it sets up very interesting these next couple of years for those 2 schools in particular, depending on which way this goes. So, yeah, I'm fascinated to see how that all wraps up. And was looking around. I don't think there's anything notable in that regard still. It's just still they're working through, I guess, the options that they have. But, yeah, the PAC piece of this whole puzzle is a very interesting one at the moment.
All right. Thank you, Paul, for the top 5. Thanks to TexasBeefHouse.com. Terrell Bernard note, Garrett. Former Baylor star, and man, he was fantastic, and then you realize how good he and Petrie and Woods and others when they leave. He was named as the Defensive Player of the Week in the AFC, the NFL releasing the AFC and NFC Players of the Week in a game that Terrell Bernard had. Tackles, sacks, tackles for loss, interceptions, all of that, fumble recovery, and he was named. Good for him. Buffalo hammered Washington, forced a ton of turnovers. He had a lot to do with that. Good to see him doing so well. All right, tonight at 10:30, it is 365 Sports Tonight on the CW. Emory working on that tomorrow. At 1, Paul Catalina, Jack McKenzie in Orlando for the triple option. They will also join us a little bit, or at least Paul will, in our show tomorrow from 3 until 6. And then he has the show Friday from Orlando and the postgame show and part of a couple of cut-ins with us from the Bounce House. Garrett Ross, Jack McKenzie, Emory, Levi, thank you. Owen, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, our great sponsors. Those of you who watch and listen, thank you. Spread the word if you can. I'm David Smoak. Good night on 365 Sports.